Good morning, Denver, Colorado. Jeff Hunt filling in for the great George Brauchler, the international man of mystery, of whom, you know, that Jason Bourne series, they designed that all after his life. Or maybe it was maybe it was Leslie Nielsen in The Naked Gun. Maybe that was more it. It's wonderful to be with you all. I hope you're having a beautiful morning. We've got a lot to cover, because here at KNUS, we're going to give you all the news, all the commentary you need, live, local, right here in Denver, Colorado. You're not going to miss it. Lauren Bobert's fundraising numbers, they're not matching Adam Fish's. Does that mean anything? Are you still a supporter of Lauren Bobert at this point? Would you go to the mat to make sure she gets elected? But she also has a primary. So would you support her primary opponent in the midst of all this? Has her time come and gone? I want to hear from you on that. Did you hear that the tattered cover filing for bankruptcy, closing 3 stores, letting go 27 employees? Any stories, background you ever had with tattered cover? I'd love to hear that as well. Trump came out with a plan to deal with the jihadists. We'll cover that in the 7 o'clock hour. The Democrats, Socialists of America, and the Democrats in Colorado running from them. By the way, I was listening to Stephen Tubbs yesterday afternoon. Timmy Hamas was, it was absolutely hilarious. Go back to the podcast and listen to Stephen Tubbs' broadcast yesterday. Was absolutely brilliant. You're not going to miss that. Jack Phillips has got a new op-ed out in the Denver Gazette today, and breaking news right now, the Denver Post coming out with its position on Proposition HH. It's probably not going to shock you where they stand. We'll cover that. Dr. Donald Sweeting, the chancellor of Colorado Christian University, major op-ed in Fox News on anti-Semitism on college campuses. Is this just another reason to avoid those types of colleges? Is higher education done in America? Have we finally seen the breaking point with this anti-Semitism on college campuses? There was a debate that broke out between Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly on this as well. Should we list the names of the students that are signing these pro-Hamas positions? We'll be covering that, an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. Do not hire my law students. I think professors have had enough of this craziness on college campuses. And then in the 9 o'clock hour, Congressman Doug Lamborn is going to be calling in to give us a sense of who he's supporting for speaker. My goodness, Republicans, figure it out. It's time. You've got to figure out who's going to lead the House Republicans to move this forward. Our country is facing challenges like the Hamas war in Israel. We've got to have leadership in there. Can we please just figure out who's going to occupy that space and move forward so we can get back to the business of this country? We're also going to cover Israel issues with Congressman Doug Lamborn in the 9 o'clock hour. And then, of course, Forbes coming out against Proposition HH. So I'm going to jump into the breaking news right now. Denver Post coming out in support of Proposition HH. This is what they say. Denver Post is supporting Proposition HH this November as a critical compromise. The ballot question will provide significant relief from the unsustainable property tax increases driven by the skyrocketing inflation in home values, while also assuring that our public schools, predominantly funded by local property tax, still receive the anticipated and much-needed boost in local revenue. Now, opponents of Proposition HH have sent out flyers incorrectly claiming that the measure will eliminate Tabor refunds, income tax returns mandated by the Taxpayer Bill of Rights. In reality, economic forecasts say that the ballot measure will reduce Tabor refunds by a small margin, just a little bit, meaning taxpayers will still get some of what they pay towards Colorado's comparatively low flat income tax rate of 4.4%. The Tabor refund dollars retained by the state will be used to backfill school districts, cities, counties, special districts for some of the money they lose from the massive statewide property tax cut provided in Proposition HH. So Denver Post arguing, we are in a really big problem here with these property tax increases, and we need some relief. And thank God the Democrats have come here with Proposition HH. Never mind your Tabor refund, because it will only be cut a little bit, tiny amount. But in all reality, we need this help from these property tax increases. So I went back, and if you've been a fan of this show, you've been a fan of KNUS, you know they've been leading the opposition to Proposition HH. You can hear on it just about every show, including mine on the weekends. You can hear the opposition to Prop HH. You know the details. So I wanted to go back and look at Gallagher. What did the Denver Post say about Gallagher back in 2020? And guess what? If you remember, it was the repeal of Gallagher that got us into this problem. 2020, Amendment B changed the formula with regards to property taxes, and now everyone's property taxes has gone up. Did the Denver Post, in all their wisdom, recognize that Amendment B was a problem and urge its voters, please protect Gallagher so that we can keep all of our property taxes low? No, of course not. Back in 2020, the Denver Post said yes on Amendment B. The Gallagher Amendment is unworkable, inflexible, and ready for repeal. So the argument we have been making all along is that this was a massive setup, years in the making. Because those at the very top of the Democrat operation here in Colorado are actually very smart. They lay stuff out years in advance to achieve their ends. The goal has always been to weaken Tabor. That has been the mission. So years ago, they repealed 2020. We're going to repeal the Gallagher Amendment, which is going to force everybody's property taxes to go up. And then, like the firefighters that start the fire themselves, the arsonists, they show up to sell you the solution. Now, my goodness, friends, your property taxes have sure gone up a lot. We here in our infinite wisdom at the Colorado State Capitol have a solution for you. In trading your proposition or your Tabor refund, just a little bit of your Tabor refund, we can provide all this property tax relief. They want you to sell out Tabor. That is always the goal. How do we know that? For this one simple reason. They did not need to tie property tax relief to repealing portions of your Tabor refund. They didn't need to do that. They could have come up with a whole plan all along that just dealt with your property tax relief. And in fact, Republicans recommended that. You don't need to tie this to Tabor. Just provide property tax relief. Why don't we do both? Why don't we give people property tax relief and continue to give them their Tabor refunds? Now, why didn't the Democrats go for that? For one simple reason. They like your money, honey. They want your money. And so this is a scheme to continue to whittle away at Tabor so they can permanently have your money. And the Denver Post, that was a player in all this, going back to the repeal of Gallagher in 2020, is setting you all up again. Friends, it is a hard no on anything statewide. Proposition HH, Proposition II. We have a ballot guide at the Centennial Institute. It's pretty easy. Just vote no on anything statewide. Pretty much I'd say vote no on anything when they want more money from you, whether it's your city council, your county commissioners, anything like that. They want Joe money. Tell them no. The only way we actually shrink government is when we starve the beast. You got to live by that. So it's always a no to more taxes, more taxes, more taxes to the state of Colorado. And I'm not a libertarian. I recognize there's a role for government, but you've got to say no to Proposition HH and, by the way, Proposition II. Just stop giving the government our money. And listen, I will change my tune. If anybody wants to call in and tell me one great thing the government does with their tax dollars here in the state of Colorado, How about your roads? How great are your roads? Not great. How about the schools? Struggling there. How about healthcare in the state of Colorado? Struggling there. So they haven't been good with the money that they have been given. They just want more of it. So you have less of it. You have to live on a tighter budget. By the way, if you're out there listening, my goodness, I got to tell you, most people I know right now are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. It is brutally bad out there. And the fact that the government wants more of your money so they can run around with their little schemes. Proposition II, by the way, Jared Polis doesn't have the money to be able to run his universal pre-K, so he wants to keep some of the nicotine taxes. That's what Proposition II is. They can't figure it out. Stop giving them money. All right. We've got a lot to cover today on the show. If you want to call in, talk about this, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text in on the 710 KNUS app. Some great texts coming in. Yeah, the Timmy Hamas apology. We're going to get into that later. Tim Hernandez, state representative, outright anti-Semite, Marxist. I'm going to get into later in the show why he doesn't actually apologize, because he doesn't believe, from his perspective, that Israel should be defended at all. He believes they're oppressors, and therefore anything waged against them is justified in his mind. Timmy Hamas, I think that name came from Stephen Tubbs, and it's brilliant because Timmy Hernandez is going to be a real problem for the Democrats. I hope that the Democrats are smart enough to take him to the train station figuratively, because he is going to be a real problem in this state if they continue to just allow him to be unleashed. And you need a John Dutton. And I think Jared Polis is this way. I think Jared Polis, I think he got to where he is because behind the scenes, he's a little bit of a John Dutton, if you know from the TV show Yellowstone, which means he gets what he wants, so to speak. Here's a question I have for you before we go to a commercial break coming up here in a few minutes. Did you see this article about Taylor Swift? And George, I'm going to bring in Taylor Swift on your program, okay? T Swift, bodyguard, flies back to Israel to fight against Hamas. So this was a bodyguard making plenty of money on the Taylor Swift tours. In fact, he was kind of famous because he's really good looking and all the girls liked him. He defended Taylor well. He has reportedly returned home to Israel to volunteer in the Israeli Defense Forces amid the war with Hamas. The identified security guard who gained online fame with Swift's Eras Tour this summer posted a picture in his military uniform to his Facebook page on Sunday, writing in part, "I stand with Israel. Shouldn't be just about a person stands with the one and only Jewish state. It should be, I stand with humanity. While one side is protecting babies, kids, and the elderly, the other side is using those as human shields," he wrote. "It'll be an insult to animals worldwide to call them animals, but those are not human beings. They killed and slaughtered families in their beds alongside families' pets, and then they burned the houses down. Try to imagine that happening in your own neighborhood and to your next door neighbors or to a family you know." So this guy, very clear. He's got moral clarity. He leaves well-paying job, bodyguard for Taylor Swift, flies back to Israel, gets his uniform on, and goes and defends his people. The reason that this is important, right? Everything, I guess, in this culture around Taylor Swift right now is important. Which football game she goes to and which football player she's dating, it gets news. But think about, here's the question I have for you. Taylor Swift has been involved in lots of politics, right? Lots of it. Very anti-Trump. She's gone to rallies around March for Our Lives. She's supported BLM. She's supported environmental issues. She's very pro-choice. She's even gotten involved in Senate campaigns in Tennessee. And to this point, At this date, Taylor Swift has not made a single comment about the worst death, single day worst deaths of Jews in the world since the Holocaust. She has not made a single statement about that. And it took her bodyguard with the type of moral clarity that I just read to you to leave his job with her, fly back to Israel, and defend his people. Does Taylor have to make a comment? Does she have to speak into this? She's spoken into other things. It's not like she's a pop star that's just kind of quiet out there, living her own life. She has spoken in on BLM issues, gun issues, abortion issues, gay marriage issues, environmental issues. She has slammed Trump. She has been very active. But is it necessary for her to speak into this issue? If this was just a regional conflict, I'd probably give her a pass. I probably would. But the fact that this was the single greatest death of Jews in the world since the Holocaust, and she's just playing it quiet, that ain't right. And it isn't right that she's the most influential leader among young teenage girls in the world right now. Definitely in America. And she's not willing to provide moral clarity on this, leadership on this. She's hiding on this issue. I don't know. Did you take your daughter to her show? I had a lot of friends that took their daughters to her show. She's led in other issues. She's fine being out there on political issues, but on this, she's silent, and I think that's wrong. If you think I'm wrong, give me a call, 303-696-1971, or text in. Are you a T Swiftie? Are you standing with T Swift in her silence on this? Is it overblown, or does she need to come out and lead on this, provide some moral clarity in the way her bodyguard has? I want to hear from you. All right, Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler on 710 KNUS. We'll be right back after these messages. Billy's telling me not to make the Swifties angry. They can change things. I'm risking a lot with George's show here. Could we end up with a massive Swiftie boycott?
Yeah, don't make the Swifties mad. Don't do that. That is a bad idea. These are the people that crashed Ticketmaster, the people that crashed AMC's AMC theater site getting tickets. Don't make the Swifties mad. And I disagree a little bit with your characterization of Taylor, because part of it, like the Black Lives Matter, I understand that she tweeted out support, but she got a lot of flack from the left that it wasn't as much support. She wasn't like, Black Lives Matter and now my new besties. Let's go, 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 and look at my t-shirt. It was a very, I think Taylor is intelligent on navigating politics in relationship to her fans. She doesn't dip her toes in the water as much as many other entertainers do. She does have her particular issues, but like on Black Lives Matter, if you go back and you read what she wrote, I think it's hard to disagree with anything that she wrote. It was a generic statement saying, we need to make sure we don't have racism, violence, and police brutality on citizens. She wasn't saying, oh my God, the cops are dirty and horrible and we need to tear them down. Nothing in there said defund the police. She didn't have any of that really loaded liberal language. It was a very intelligent statement. And I would be willing to bet she didn't write it herself. I would bet that she had a PR team that helped her craft it because it was very middle of the road. Again, you go back and read it, it's hard to disagree with or say, well, obviously she's wrong about this in that statement.
Right. Yeah. But if it was just that, I'd give you that. But here's a post she did a few years ago. This was in the run-up to Trump. In the past, I've been reluctant to publicly voice my political opinions, but due to several events in my life and the world in the past 2 years, I feel very differently about that now. I've always have and always will cast my vote based on which candidate will protect and fight for the human rights I believe we all deserve in this country. I believe in the fight for LGBTQ rights and that any form of discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender is wrong. She has spoken in on gun issues, environmental issues. She's been very active in this stuff. I just am not into the both sidism in this Hamas-Israel war. Now, maybe at some point later, if Israel, no one's giving Israel a blank check. If Israel does something that's not right, they're totally open to criticism. But this was the worst attack on Jews in a single day since the Holocaust. And not a single mention. You can go out there and talk about pro-choice issues, environmental issues, gun issues.
Take a look at her feed. How often does she do that? Is she posting about these things daily?
But this is a historic event. This isn't one thing.
Hang on a sec. But this is important, because if you're saying, why isn't she talking about this? Tell me how often she involves herself in the political discussion. And my premise is rarely. She rarely involves herself in the political discussion. If you look at her timeline of social media, rarely does she take political positions. Every once in a while she does. The LGBTQ thing is one of her touch points. That is one that she speaks out a lot more than anything else. I can think of less than a handful of tweets she's ever said around Donald Trump. And I could be wrong, but I challenge that there are more than 12 out there. She just does not involve herself that much. So I look at the idea of, oh my gosh, we have to identify someone, and because they didn't say what we want them to say, now somehow they're a pariah. Remember, if they come out and she says something you disagree with, then she's a pariah. Or it's the classic Laura Ingraham, as I gave you off the air, where she turns to something LeBron James says and goes, shut up and dribble. Why do we have athletes? Why do we have musicians telling us about their politics? But now we're criticizing them going, hey, how come the athletes, how come the musicians aren't telling us about their politics? We have to decide what one we want. Do we want them to be active politically and say, yes, they need to get involved? Or do we want them to perform and stay out of it and make it entertaining? Because many people walked away from the NFL because politics was involved. So be careful before we start criticizing our entertainers or our athletes or our movie stars for not taking a political stance.
Billy, this was a 9/11-like event. You can talk about the politics out there of this issue, this candidate, that candidate. This was a world historic event that resulted in the mass death of Jews in a way that hasn't been seen since the Holocaust. There's not politics in the same way as maybe supporting a candidate. This is just standing on human rights issues.
Do you think that Taylor Swift may have some fans that are native Palestinians. Do you
Yeah,
think?
but
Do you
no
think,
one's blaming all
hang on a sec.
Palestinians for
Do you
this.
think Taylor Swift may have some Palestinian fans whose families or family members have been harmed or killed by actions of Israel over the previous generations? I'm not talking about now, but remember, this is the Middle East. They have a long, long, long memory. And because you killed my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my uncle, whatever it is, I'm still mad at you. And be careful when she's taking this. I understand and I agree with you that this is a horrible situation. But when we're getting mad at the entertainer for not taking a position, it's an entertainer. Remember the world in which she lives in. I don't want my entertainers taking political statements, even even if it is one that I agree with. I think that they need to be an entertainer. Let the politicians, let the state's craftsmen, let the foreign policy experts. Those are the people that need to make the statement. I don't care what Russell Wilson thinks about the Hamas attack in Israel. Don't care. Doesn't matter to me.
I think she opened that door when she got into other stuff. But now, listen, do you think that with her bodyguard, pretty famous bodyguard, not just some guy, but some, central figure associated with her, especially online with the Swifties, taking a strong role is now going to force her to have to deal with it?
No, because why would it? It's your bodyguard went to do this. I mean, other than what you're going to do, come out there and say, the best thing that you could do is come out and say, I support him. It's great that he's doing this. I hope he's safe. I can't wait to see him with a safe return. I'm worried about him. That would be the most politically correct thing for her to do. I don't understand why would it? And again, why this all of a sudden concern about what a major entertainer thinks about our politics? I don't really care. It's not that much of a mover. I don't think so. And Taylor can get involved and she can move mountains, but be careful. Before you start criticizing her, saying, hey, you're not taking a political position, I think you should, be careful. Because if you make that group mad, they will hurt you. I mean, you understand what happened during National Voter Registration Day. The National Voter Registration Day a couple of weeks ago, Taylor Swift just put on Instagram, not all of her social media. Yeah. Only on Instagram, she didn't say go register as a liberal, a conservative, a Democrat, a Republican, nothing. She just put out it's National Voter Registration Day. They saw more than a 25% increase in people on that website during the day than what they get normally. There was more than 115% increase in registrations from people 18 to 21, in part due to her.
She has influence.
Be careful.
She has big influence.
Yes. And so be careful before you want to say, hey, I want Taylor to start taking political positions. Be careful, because you may not like the one she takes. And when she does, it may hurt the candidates and the issues that you think are important. So I understand that this is a universal, but if you want to take a position here, don't then throw rocks when she takes other positions. And don't be upset if those positions end up harming what you think should be happening. Careful.
Here are the text messages. She has like a high school education, man. I don't care about her opinion. I wish all celebs would stay in their lane.
Yes.
Most are uneducated and only rich because of capitalism and entertainment. I place her equally with a 7-footer who can dunk a basketball.
Well, see, I would put her on a different level because how she crafts the music and what she's done has been, as far as the music industry, incredibly intelligent. There are some things going on behind the scenes that are incredibly smart, one of which being her concert film. The concert film that she has sitting in AMC theaters right now was not negotiated with a movie house. It's not many people know the story that her father was in negotiations with several major Hollywood studios. They said, we want to take Taylor's enormous tour and make it into a concert film. This has been done several other places before. This would be great. Dad was not happy with how they were wanting to edit it and the royalties they wanted to keep from it. He turned to Taylor and said, guess what? We know a lot of people that are video editors. We know what this show is supposed to look like. Let's go to AMC and negotiate our own contract. They edited the movie themselves. They produced it themselves, and they kept all the revenue. Very smart, incredibly intelligent. There are very few other entertainers in the sphere that would be able to do that. She's one of them. Yeah, so again, but I don't care what she thinks about this because I don't want to hear her politics. In fact, I get upset even when I agree with some of her politics. I get upset with it. I don't want to hear it. That's not the role.
Taylor believes that she can provide moral clarity on some issues. On this, she's silent. This is not the same as a traditional political issue. This is a historic mass casualty. And here's one. Taylor needs to put on her big girl pants
For
and
what?
speak up on this
Why?
stuff.
Why? Tell me what is gained by Taylor taking a political position that you agree with. What is possibly gained? No,
humanity
what
is gained.
What
Billy?
is gained? No, what is gained? What is going to change? What happens? How does it make you
moral
feel better?
Clarity, moral clarity on this issue.
How does it make
they
you feel better?
Babies, and she is one of the most influential pop stars in the world that has already gotten involved in politics. She feels like she can have moral clarity on this.
No, she takes specific issues that she's looking at. You're just mad she's not speaking up on the issue that you want her to. And yet if she took a position you disagreed with, you would tell her to be quiet.
I wouldn't tell her to be quiet. I'd tell her she was wrong.
Yes, you would.
I would tell her she's wrong.
The issue would be, why do we hear from entertainers? Why do entertainers want to hear? Why do they interject in this? Because that's what I hear every time someone disagrees with it.
I don't understand why this is an issue. That. When Travis Tritt came out against the vaccine mandates, and I'm not going to force people to wear masks in my show and all that stuff, I thought that was perfectly fine. I didn't say Travis Tritt should stay in his own lane. I'm glad he led on this issue. He has influence, and I thought he did a good job. On this case, I just can't believe it took her bodyguard, who has more guts than she does, to be able to address these issues and provide moral clarity.
I don't understand why are you looking at Taylor Swift being the lodestar for your moral clarity? Why does that matter to you?
Huge influence.
So why does it matter? How much time do you spend on Taylor Swift's Instagram and social media? How much do you actually care about how much she thinks? That's what I understand. I understand why all of a sudden you're so worried about what she thinks about this subject when you don't care what she thinks about any other subject. Why is this? This to me is an excuse to throw rocks. An excuse to throw rocks in a situation where, if it was another situation and you disagreed with what she said, it would be entertainers need to stay in their lane. Celebrities need to stay in their lane. We see this over and over and over again. It doesn't matter. I don't care what an entertainer thinks about what is going on with the politics in the Middle East. And if she came out one way or the other, it's not going to change anything. At the core, it doesn't really matter. There isn't a single thing that all the Swifties are going to change. There isn't a single thing about this that they're going to be able to change.
These text messages are amazing, by the way. Taylor needs to shake it off. All right, we're up against the commercial break. Billy and his and the Swifties. We're definitely we're starting off the morning right by kicking that hornet's nest over. This is Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. We've still got a lot to cover. Here's the next news story. Adam Fish, Congressional District 3, outraising Lauren Bobert by 4x. Is Lauren Bobert done? Do you think she's done? Now, she provides her opinions all the time, but is she right for Congressional District 3 anymore? Would you stand with her? Would you fight alongside her? Would you support her even with a primary coming up? All of that and more on the George Brauchler Show. Jeff Hunt filling in. We'll be right back after these messages. Jeff, I'm filling in for George Brauchler. The text messages are flying in. My goodness. We really kicked over the hornet's nest on the T-Swift. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that are T-Swifties listening, George, but they definitely have an opinion on this. She has the morals of an alley cat. That's an insult to the cat. How can anyone put their trust in that? Apparently, they think I was defending Taylor Swift, Billy. So there you go. All right. Lauren Bobert. This is an article from Insider. Embattled Rep. Lauren Bobert, Democrats challenger, raised nearly 4 times the amount of the money she did. Adam Fish has massively outraised embattled GOP Representative Lauren Bobert. Already, the new campaign finance report, Fish raised a whopping $3.3 million in the most recent quarter. The pair are likely headed for a rematch after Bobert won only 546 votes in 2022. So CD3, it's half of the state of Colorado. Entire western half goes all the way down to Pueblo, Grand Junction, all those areas. Absolutely critical. We only have 3 congressional seats that Republicans host. And I say we because I'm a registered Republican, been that since the first time I could vote when I was 18. I'm a little concerned about losing that seat. And I really raised this question because I want to understand where the listeners of KNUS are. And here's where you can stand on this issue with regards to Lauren Bobert, Beetlejuice, her ability to represent her district. And I'll tell you my perspective. I have hosted Lauren since she got elected at the Western Conservative Summit. I'm the chairman of the Western Conservative Summit. It's one of the largest gatherings of conservatives in the entire Western United States. 2,000 attendees. We host her every year. And for multiple years in a row, she was our number 1 top-rated speaker. Did a fantastic job. The audience loved her. Excited about her leadership. And to be honest, after Scott Tipton, it was refreshing, right? Scott Tipton, like 5 terms. But I really couldn't tell you anything about him or what he achieved in Congressional District 3. And here you have a mom fired up over Beto O'Rourke. Remember, that's when she kind of launched onto the scene for the very first time. She directly confronts Beto O'Rourke over the idea that he's going to take everyone's AR-15s. And so you have a mom, you have a working class mom. She used to be the manager of a McDonald's. She had this great restaurant where everyone had guns on their hips. I mean, totally endearing, connected with the audience, did a fantastic job. It was exciting and fun. She took on the libs, the passion. And I want to know from you, please text in on the 710 KNUS app or give us a call, 303-696-1971. That's 303-696-1971. Are you willing to stand with her through the primary? So she has a number of challengers. One in particular is getting the support of some of Lauren's previous supporters. The county commissioners of Mesa County, people like Bobby Daniels, have switched over and are no longer supporting Lauren or going with Jeff Hurd. So would you support Lauren through the primary if she wins the primary, even if you didn't support her? And if she wins the primary, are you willing to go to the mat to make sure that she wins that district? Friends, if she loses that district, we are down to Ken Buck and Doug Lamborn in any type of actual federal leadership in the state. That's it. So how important is it to keep that district? Is it better to get Jeff Hurd, who, frankly, most people have never even heard of, I hadn't even heard of prior to this, to kind of go back to that Scott Tipton world where we're going to, kind of just allow a safe candidate there because at least we have a Republican, but I can't tell you much about him or what he's accomplished? Or do you want that tip of the spear, willing to fight? And did she burn bridges with Beetlejuice? Should we just ignore it? Whatever. Like, think about all the other things that are going on out there. The fact that she did some inappropriate stuff at Beetlejuice we're willing to overlook. It's not that big of a deal. Or is she done? She's going to cost us that seat. We need to move past this. Those types of things. Adam Frisch, thank you. Yeah, he's the Democrat challenger, and he has been around. Adam Frisch raising $3.3 million, nearly 4 times the amount of money she did. I just feel like, guys, we might be walking right down an oncoming train. The Democrats have it out for Lauren. They really, really don't like her. I support Lauren Bobert 100%. She was scammed and misused by the news media and the leftists. Thank you, George. Interesting how Bobert and Tina Peters come from the same part of the state. Oh, my goodness. This is a big deal. Guys, if we get this wrong, if Republicans get this wrong, the only federal leadership we have left is Ken Buck and Doug Lamborn. By the way, we're going to have Doug Lamborn on in the 9 o'clock hour right before he goes to vote for the Speaker of the House. Guys, I got to be honest. I don't think Republicans are leading that well right now. It doesn't feel that way. Definitely here in the state of Colorado, we have our own challenges. We can't seem to get anybody elected, but we can't even choose within our own caucus who the speaker is going to be. Just get behind Jim Jordan at this point. We've got work to do. We've got a war in the Middle East that's brewing. Get after it, Republicans. We're going to cover that with Doug Lamborn and more in the 9 o'clock hour. Stick around. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. We'll be right back.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today.
Good morning, you cowboys and cowgirls, you resistors, you revolutionaries, you patriots, you rough riders. The state of Colorado is broken, dominated by radical leftists in the governor's office, judiciary, a supermajority of leftists in the Colorado House, Timmy Hernandez, and a near supermajority in the Senate. Not a single freedom-loving leader in statewide leadership. The odds are stacked against you. The leftists are on a mission to round up all those that resist. How dare you stand against the central planners, the uniparty, the benevolent government overlords? Obey your leaders, you Coloradans, they say. Ignore the crime. Never mind the poverty, the human suffering, the homelessness, the suicides, the drug overdoses, failing schools, businesses leaving the state, rising cost of everything. These leftists will ruin the state because nobody has the courage to stand up. That changes here, and that changes today. Regulators, mount up. It's time to ride. My name is Jeff Hunt, filling in for George Brauchler, and the great peaceful resistance begins here this morning. Let's get to it. A lot of support for Lauren Bobert. They're going to stand with her. I haven't seen a single text message coming in saying we need to replace her during the primary. Jeff Hurd, I hope you're hearing that. They are standing with Lauren here at 710 KNUS. I get standing with her during the general election, but during the primary, they believe they're going to support her and she will defeat Adam Frisch, even though he's outraised Lauren 4 times. My goodness. 4 times. It's going to be a fight. She only won by 500 votes. She only won by 500 votes, guys. If we get this wrong and she loses, we are left with Ken Buck and Doug Lamborn in any type of federal leadership in the state of Colorado. That's 2 of 8 congressional districts. But the text message is coming in on the 710 KNUS app. They're with Lauren. We're going to stay committed to her. If you have comments on this, give us a call, 303-696-1971. If you think it's time to replace Lauren in the primary, the Mesa County commissioners believe that's the case. Let me know if you think Lauren's done a good job. By the way, one text message said that Lauren was behind the ousting of Kevin. I don't think that's the case. I think she voted for Kevin. It was only Ken Buck that was the only Colorado congressman that stood against Kevin McCarthy. So she voted with Kevin. And by the way, we're going to have Doug Lamborn on in the 9 o'clock hour because they're going to vote at noon Eastern, 10 a.m. Colorado time on the Speaker of the House. Guys, at this point, and I saw Ken Buck too, said he's not going to support Jim Jordan over the fact that Jim Jordan was with Trump on the election issues. I would say I wouldn't be as concerned about getting a speaker elected because, frankly, Billy and I were discussing this. I think a government that shuts and locks the doors and doesn't do much at all is the best form of government. And so a house that kind of stalled out so it can't be doing what it needs, what it traditionally does, I'd be okay with the exception of what's happening in Israel. I think we've got to be there to defend Israel, to do what we can. Guys, this is not another Afghanistan. It's not another Iraq. These are not backward cultures that literally within 3 days of leaving force girls back out of their schools. This is not the same type of culture. Israel is an ally. Israel should be defended. And I think our government needs to be there to support them. By the way, if you missed Hugh Hewitt this morning, go back and listen to that podcast right before the George show. It was brilliant talking about, we have 2 carrier divisions already in the Middle East, just outside Israel, to put pressure on Iran that if they unleash Hezbollah, they're going to face consequences. Guys, we are heading in this direction. There's going to be serious issues in the Middle East. The House of Representatives needs to be there to support Israel in this case. And if they're not, That's a problem. So I think you got to get behind Jim Jordan. Who else is there at this point? Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Get Jim Jordan across. Ken Buck is now with Jim Jordan over January 6th and election issues and all that stuff. Oh, my goodness. I don't know who else is out there. Seriously, who else? Steve Scalise withdrew. And if Republicans can't make it clear that they can govern, my goodness, it's a bad message to be sending at this point. I think you got to get clear on that. All right, Jim from Denver, you're tired of Bobert.
Oh, boy, that was quick. Yeah, I'd say it's time to get rid of Bobert and put an actual conservative in that position. She's not a conservative in any way.
What makes you say she's not a conservative?
You can't just slap a gun on someone, parade them around, boost them up with a bra, pull the string on their back, and have them repeat whatever you want. And then she gets caught in a public place, in a place with children gripping a Democrat sausage.
What?
She's done. She's got as much discipline as a New York, Manhattan developer when it comes to finance and conservatism.
What about her votes? Now, I can understand the critique of her personal life, okay? But listen, you're going to replace her with Adam Frisch, who was caught doing something in a storage unit, cheating on his wife?
Nope. You need to move. You need to move to that district and put your money where your mouth is. George needs to move. We need someone that's an actual conservative rather than just a mouthpiece and some eye candy for those of us that are not sensible enough, okay? We need to get back to the old method of electing our leaders and have low voter turnout. When you bring in a Lauren Bobert, when you bring in a Donald Trump, this excites the electorate. We lose every election where the electorate comes out and votes in mass.
So
it's always been that way.
Jim, you're recommending kind of going back to the Scott Tipton days. But what did Scott ever do? I mean, Scott was kind of a quiet candidate, but
there you go.
Give me a sense of what he achieved for the people of the 3rd Congressional District.
He was a business-like Republican conservative. He didn't spout his mouth off, exciting the other political party to come and vote against him. He didn't do that.
Do you think
we need to show discipline, Jeff?
Do you think, though, that those types of Republicans, here's my critique and pushback on those types of Republicans, is that they tend, because they don't get the pushback because they're not pushing back on the left. So they essentially just kind of go along to get along, and we eventually just kind of move in a leftist direction because they won't fight back. I mean, Lauren was known as a fighter. She went right in Beto O'Rourke's face, and that's what shot her to the moon because the constituents were going, that's the type of Republican we want. They're actually going to drive back the other direction, as opposed to just kind of going along to get along and allowing the left to just kind of incrementally move further and further down the road.
I hear you. But when you take people in, you turn the table completely over, everybody notices this. And people realize that it's time to go and vote in mass. We've got too many people voting. Now, you may argue with that on the radio, but in private, I'm pretty sure you would say that, yeah, there's far too many people voting in our election. We need to get back to the point where we have fewer people voting. That's why the real conservatives in the 90s said, let's just give up on the national plan and let's go back to the states and the local elections. And we flourished because we didn't go out there with flamingos flying all over the place, talking this game that we didn't mean in the first place, saying ridiculous things like we're going to pay off the debt, when in fact the debt is what makes this country go around. Like we're going to build a wall and have somebody else pay for it. These things are ridiculous. You know, back in 2008, the super conservative Douglas County elected a chairman of the school board, And he did exactly this on the local level. And I've watched it happen over and over and over again. Next thing you know, Douglas County had the Douglas County parents. This guy couldn't shut his mouth long enough to stop pouring fuel on the flames of Douglas County. And next thing you know, they even lost the easy to hold Douglas County School Board. They lost it because this guy had zero discipline. He couldn't shut his mouth. And next thing you know, even the Douglas County School Board was in jeopardy. And we watched it happen on the local level, the national level. And we think this is the way to get through life. We can't. These people are not. Let me just ask you this. Was Ted Haggard in Colorado Springs, was he a conservative?
No, definitely not. Definitely not with his lifestyle. So, Jim, here's the question.
Money.
I wonder if we run into this trap because the left knows what they're doing. Okay, so they know that most people do not want to read about their congressperson in the news, right? I don't want to care about it. I've got enough going on. I've got kids to get to school. I've got to get after school activities. I've got a job. I'm barely making it work. And I got to read about all this quote unquote drama around my political leader. And people, I think most Americans don't like that, but I think the left knows that. And here's the reason why. I used to work for Rick Santorum in the U.S. Senate, 2006. Single greatest loss of an incumbent U.S. senator in American history was Rick Santorum in 2006. Lost by 16 points. He lost by 16 points. Now, was Rick, who is a passionate Catholic, family man, great guy, was he a bad statesman? No. But he was so bold on issues that the left said, we've got to take him out. So they put him constantly in the news all the time. And they manufactured this type of stuff so that people go, gosh, I just want to have Bob Casey in there. Who cares about Bob Casey? Nobody knows a thing about Bob Casey, but they got their Democrat in there. So I think the media does this. And I think that, look, there's a fair critique of Lauren Bobert, especially around Beetlejuice, as a Christian woman, right? That's a fair critique. But I think the media goes, we know voters don't want this, so we're going to generate constant. I mean, it's every single day about her kissing her husband and smoking cigarettes and all this stuff. Who cares about that stuff? But they know they can generate controversy about it, and the voters are going to go, well, maybe we'll just replace her with Adam Frisch. I think there's a strategy to this, and they get people worked up like you, Jim. What say you?
Of course there's a strategy, but don't blame the liberal media. They're doing it to themselves. They're on video. There's cameras everywhere, okay? You can pull Lauren Bobert's string coming out of her back, and she'll repeat anything you want her to. She's on video doing it. She's been caught. She is not a conservative. Just because you slap a gun on her and you boost her up with a bra, it captures so many of us to think that that's a conservative. That is the farthest thing from a conservative.
So you're advocating we replace her in the primary, but if she wins the primary, do you think the voters of Colorado should still support her?
They have no choice. They have no choice because it's a game, but we've got to stop exciting the other side. And it's not the liberal media that's doing it. It's us that are doing it with our choices and with our hot air. These people, such as a Manhattan businessman and the bar owner in Rifle, Colorado, are not the conservatives that we are. They're not us. They're just out there to steal the donations and steal the voters. And, the Manhattan businessman, who thought that a Manhattan businessman would be the one to save middle America, huh? But that's what we believe right at the moment, but it's wrong. It's false.
Jim,
We're being lied to.
I appreciate the call. Thanks so much. Look, I think at the end of the day, the conservatives are looking for fighters because we went through the Bush era.
No.
We went through McCain. I worked on the Romney campaign. We had these guys, and it was the slow march to the left that
You wanna
continue
win,
to
and you wanna
take
win
place
fast.
among them.
You're not going to win fast with these hyped up people that are fake. Okay. The thing that is fake is not the news. The thing that is fake is slapping a gun on a gal, boosting her up, pulling her string and putting her out in public. You're trying to win the liberals' game with your own people that are not conservative. You've got to get religious conservatives, and they've got to be out there in the public, and they can't be out there buying meth and getting gay sex from people when they're church leaders. These people can't be out there in the public. Just because there's cameras everywhere doesn't mean you can blame the cameras. These people keep getting caught because they're not conservatives.
Jim, I appreciate
Period.
it. What Jim's arguing for is
You can blame the cameras.
What Jim's arguing for is that you got to live a conservative life, right? If you're going to be a conservative, you got to live a conservative life. I think that's a fair critique of what happened to Lauren at Beetlejuice. I don't think it's fair to say she's not a conservative. I've known Lauren. She's done great at the Western Conservative Summit. I don't know votes. At the end of the day, votes that aren't conservative votes. If you're going to say she's not a conservative, you got to come with that. But the truth is, we as conservatives do call for living conservative lives. All right, Sarah from Denver, you're on with Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler.
Hi, I like Lauren Bobert. I like her spunk. She got caught at Beetlejuice. Yes. Well, Bill Clinton set the standard. So to me, she made a mistake. She's still a conservative. Her vote is much more important. And I love her spunk.
So would you support replacing Lauren with someone like Jeff Hurd, who's generally unknown, that the Mesa County commissioners are getting behind? And we're kind of going back to the Scott Tipton days. Like, I can't tell you much of what Scott did. I think he's a fine guy. I think he was kind of that Bush Republican, but he wasn't fighting back the way Lauren fights.
Exactly. I think people are tired of let's go along to get along. And I love her spunk. She has good leadership. Of course, you'd have to concentrate on her voting record, et cetera, but she also voted for McCarthy, and Matt Gaetz, kind of blew that one. So, and she didn't. So, her private life is her private life. I think she learned from this. We all learn lessons. And I love her. I love that she's a fighter. Good for her.
Sarah, I appreciate the call. I think the truth, I've been in this game long enough to watch the trajectory. Okay. You cannot ignore the rise of the Tea Party in 2010. This is not 2004 George Bush Republicans anymore. I'm sorry. No. We tried it. Did we get some stuff done? Yeah, we got a few Supreme Court justices, right? Samuel Alito, great. He wrote the end of Roe v. Wade. You can't say everything Bush did was wrong. But after Obama, the rise of the Tea Party, Republicans want fighters. And this is what I try to explain to my colleagues that are still kind of in the Bush world right now, that we're just in a different era. And the primary issue, and I'm now going to make the leap to Donald Trump right now. The primary issue, and Sarah, you're the type of voter that I think would, is that we are dealing with a corrupt, overbearing federal government that's picking winners and losers, and people are tired of it. They're exhausted. And the kind of go along to get along Republicans that have put us in this position are not trusted to deliver. And so we want somebody that's going to go in there and really turn things around. Sarah, I appreciate your call. We're up against a commercial break. Friends, Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler on 710 KNUS. When we come back, Donald Trump has a plan to keep the jihadists out of America. I'll fill you in on it. Stick around. We'll be right back. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. You know, most of the text messages, I love Lauren. The conservative grassroots base that makes up 710 KNUS is standing with her. They're not letting go what happened at Beetlejuice, but they like fighting Lauren. And they're going to continue to stand with her even through the primary. It's going to be interesting to see, as I mentioned, the county commissioners in Mesa County are breaking against Lauren, supporting Jeff Hurd, kind of going back, I think, to those Scott Tipton days. Now, some of these county commissioners won. I think one county commissioner I saw won by 4,000 more votes in the same area than Lauren got. So they know their constituents. Again, all politics is local. I think the left has it out for her, partially because she's so effective. If this was a Democrat, they wouldn't nearly. I mean, I just got like 5 more headlines about her. The left goes after her because she is effective. But it's going to be a real question as to whether or not she can win 500 more votes, or if Adam Frisch can win those votes and take the district. And if that happens, friends, we are down to Ken Buck and Doug Lamborn, 2 of 8 congressional seats. It's going to be a rough time in Colorado if that's the case. We've got to win CD3. We'll have to watch how that all plays out. All right, so Trump has a plan to keep jihadists and their sympathizers out of America. He released this yesterday. Here is his plan. Point by point, reinstate and expand Trump travel ban on entry from terror-plagued countries, territories, and places. Re-implement a full suspension of State Department refugee resettlement. Implement strong ideological screening for all immigrants to the United States, sympathy for jihadist Hamas or Hamas ideology will be automatically disqualifying, aggressively deport resident aliens with jihadist sympathies, revoke the student visas of radical anti-American and anti-Semitic foreigners at colleges and universities, proactively send ICE to pro-jihadist demonstrations to enforce our immigration laws and remove the violators from our country. Continue and expand denaturalization of criminals, terrorists, and immigration cheats, and invoke the Alien Enemies Act to accelerate domestic deportations. Trump is ready to lead on that. So here's my question to you. After his first presidency, do you trust him to deliver on that? This is why Ann Coulter broke with Donald Trump, because he wasn't strong enough on the wall and dealing with immigration issues. She wanted even stronger engagement on this and push on this, and he wasn't strong enough there, and so she broke with him on it. Friends, this is a really big deal if we don't get this right with regards to immigration and jihadists here. There's plenty of evidence that there are immigrants coming, illegal immigrants coming from terrorist states right through our border. And these kind of globalists that are in power who, frankly, don't even want a border. You know that, right? You know that that is the end goal with the globalists that are in power. They don't believe in borders, because I've been to enough of these kind of like anti-nationalist conventions that they put on to know that they don't believe in that. In fact, one of the biggest seminaries in Colorado, the biggest one, just put one on kind of promoting globalism and rejecting borders and nationalism. It was horrible. So they've essentially, by de facto law, just allowed the borders wide open to allow these terrorists to come in. We know it's just a ticking time bomb. So Donald Trump comes out with his plan. We're going to reinstate and expand the Trump travel bans. We're going to re-implement a full suspension of State Department refugee resettlement. There was some stuff that he did that was good during his presidency, right? Like, you couldn't just come to America and claim the idea that you should be a refugee here, asylum. You couldn't just come to America and claim asylum. You had to do it in the country where you were coming from. I love the idea of revoking the student visas of radical anti-American and anti-Semitic foreigners at colleges and universities. We're going to get into this in the 8 o'clock hour when I host the chancellor of Colorado Christian University. Friends, these universities are cesspools of anti-Americanism and anti-Semitism. And it's disgusting what has happened. And the fact that our country has just allowed them to come in and not only to be educated among the best and brightest in our country and then take all that stuff home, but then to be able to infiltrate our universities and spread their ideologies. It's just not right. I support that. But I think Trump's got to step it up if he gets a second term, guys. That's one of the most appealing things about him, is I would like to see an unleashed Donald Trump in a second presidency, not only against kind of federal government corruption, but actually doing something about the border. And no one is totally anti-immigrant. This idea that the left portrays that is just not true. But we're going to allow our borders and allow people just totally untraceable to pour into our country, these young men that could do serious harm to this country. I think he needs to step it up. I want to see him step it up. Get Trump back in the White House. I agree with everything he said. And by the way, good morning from Nebraska. Thank you. It's great to have listeners. That's what I love about KNUS. We've had listeners from Texas, Florida, Nebraska, all texting in. Do you agree with Trump's plan? And is it enough? And do you trust him to be able to deliver on this in a second term? Continue and expand the denaturalization of criminals, terrorists, and immigration cheats. Proactively send ICE to pro-jihadist demonstrations to enforce our immigration laws.
How's he going to do that?
And remove the violators from our country.
How's he going to do that? You're going to send ICE to a demonstration that is pro-Palestine or whatever it is, and ICE is going to do
take pictures. What? Take pictures.
That's
they
not what
do
he says.
that at every other conservative event.
He doesn't say take pictures. He says send them there to do what?
Put them on a list and send them away.
You're going to take pictures of them and identify them how, and what are you going to do? How do you identify them? Are you going to check IDs there? I understand that they come to conservative rallies and they also come to liberal rallies and they take pictures.
Right.
And then what's going to happen? See, the thing is, I read this plan from Donald Trump, and from where I sit, and I'm not going to like this, but that is a plan in which Donald Trump is counting on his supporters not being bright enough to realize that it is a pile of crap. There isn't a single thing that he can relatively easily accomplish with any assurance. It is a feel-good series of words that he's strung together to make you feel like he's going to do something, and none of which he can accomplish. How are you going to possibly screen psychologically for jihadists at the border? How are you going to possibly accomplish that? Please.
Implement strong ideological screenings for all immigrants to the United States.
How you do that? How?
Check their social media accounts.
That's not an ideological screening. That's not an ideological screening.
Of course, that's an ideological screening.
No, it is not. That's looking at some public statements. If you're talking about an ideological screening, that is something that is an in-depth conversation, rather than having the person show up at the border and go, "Can I see your social media?" And if you think the person is an active jihadist, you think they're going to keep the stuff that is all the jihadi stuff on their social media when they're going to walk to the border?
Yes.
No, they're not. No,
Billy,
they're not. Hang on.
Literally last night was watching
not.
Hamas guys with GoPro videos. They record everything. They're bizarrely socially media connected. They love to display that stuff.
Yes, they do. What I'm asking is, if you're trying to sneak a jihadist into the U.S., because showing up at the front door and going, "Hi, I'm here for the jihad. Can I come in now?"
They're doing it now.
No, they're not.
They're doing it now. They're walking right across the border.
Jeff, they're not showing up at the border saying, "Hi, I'm a jihadist. Can I come in and do the stuff now?" That's not what they're doing. And to think that Put yourself on the other side. You're a jihadist and you're trying to get somebody into the country. Do you think you're going to send somebody to the border that's going to have a long history of social media expressing jihad if that's the screening?
No, we're going to send them to Harvard.
No, but
that's
they're not
where
going
we
to show
send
up.
them
Hang on a
now.
second. You're being irrational. The issue is you don't think that the other side is smart enough to go, wow, here's the stuff you're not supposed to say in order to get in. We already know communications happen to people coming to the border and instructing them how to claim asylum, even if it's not a legitimate claim, so that they can get into the system.
Yes, they
We
know how
that
to
exists.
game the system.
Yes. So the idea that Donald Trump says, I'm going to have this psychological screening that we don't know what it is, we don't know how it's going to be implemented, is somehow going to defeat the people that already are figuring out how to defeat the system. This is farcical. This is a joke. There is nothing in that statement that he makes is going to do anything, but it's going to make his supporters feel like he's doing something. He's my guy. He absolutely has a plan, even though the plan is crap.
They're
The plan is
allowing
crap.
them into Ivy League schools and walk across the border, and then they all form in little protests and go around the city of Chicago.
Okay, please show me. Please show me the
promoting
jihadist.
their
Hang on a sec.
Hamas
Please-
agenda.
Please show me the jihadist that has walked across the border and is now attending Harvard. That was your statement. Where's that person?
No, they're not walking across the border going to Harvard. They're just flying into Boston and going to Harvard.
Yeah, so that's
I mean, we
hang on a
literally
sec.
have our Ivy League schools
Hold on.
filled
Hang on a
with
sec.
jihadist sympathizers.
Define filled.
enough for 30 student groups at Harvard to sign a document.
Okay.
30 student groups. This wasn't one or two. This was 30 student groups.
So you're saying all the student groups are now jihadists.
I said 30 of them.
Those 30 groups are now classified as jihadists.
They're out there blaming Israel for what happened. They're standing with Hamas.
Could
Billy?
they, hang on a sec, could they be young skulls full of mush that are wrong rather
Yes.
than being these hardcore jihadists? But yet you decided they were jihadists at that point. Now, if
They're
you're talking
supporting
about,
it.
if you're talking about people, what Hamas did wasn't necessarily the attack, wasn't necessarily jihad per se. When you're talking about the motivation and what was happening there, it wasn't a call to jihad and then Hamas acted. That's not the issue. And that's why this is wrong by Trump. This is why it is to confuse his supporters, to make him feel like he's doing something when he has nothing. Now, if you're worried about the people that are sympathizing with the jihadists and coming over into our schools, then we need to talk about that idea of the exchange program, which is different than the asylum seekers at the border. And that exchange program, Donald Trump doesn't really pay anything more than lip service to. He doesn't tell you how he's going to weed those people out. He's just going to decide you're anti-Semitic or whatever, and then throw you out. We don't. How do you possibly
That is
decide
way
what that
better
is?
than what we have right now. Are you kidding me? We're allowing who knows to cross the border
So you
into
just
our
want,
country.
So you just want a
I would like-
solution.
I
You're not
would like-
concerned. You're not concerned if the solution is effective
No,
or
you're
the solution can do anything.
you're
You just
arguing
want
the
a solution.
perfect is the enemy of the good. I would
No.
take anything
No,
at
the
this
issue,
point
The issue is
to protect our country from
When-
an open border, from people from terrorist-loving countries just walking right into our country
when you're in
with no problem whatsoever.
when you're in a ship and the ship has a hole and it's leaking, sitting there and saying, I am now going to build us a new ship, or I am now going to be able to repair this hole with technology and raw materials I don't have, is stupid. And that's what Donald Trump is doing. He's putting forth a plan that doesn't work, has no mechanism to work, but is going to make you feel better. How is he possibly going to accomplish a psychological screening? What is ICE
Like
going to
I
do
said,
when they show up?
You could definitely look at their social media. All right,
and that's absolutely, because what the jihadists are definitely not going to do is scrub their social media and understand the questions to ask and the right answers to give in order to get into the country. That's certainly not what they're going to do because they're dumb about it. No, they're smart enough about it. The idea that is going to work is farcical. It is.
I
This is
would
nothing
take
more than a suggestion.
that over anything we currently have.
That's okay.
All
If
right.
you can support a farcical solution if you want, but it's not going to solve the problem. That's important.
This is fun. Billy, it's fun to go back and forth with you. I appreciate it. All right, Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. We're up against a commercial break. I want to hear from you as to whether or not you think this is good enough, or at least a start. I'm happy to at least have a start because Joe Biden and his globalist viewpoint of just no borders, allowing people to come in, has put our country at risk. And I'm glad Donald Trump is stepping up. It may not be perfect, but it's better than what we currently have. All right, we've got people texting in. They agree with Billy. and they agree with me. You're welcome to give us a call, 303-696-1971. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler on 710 KNUS. We are talking. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler on 710 KNUS. Eric Manning wants to know how much Dick Wadhams is paying Billy to say all this. Next text message. I agree with Billy Thorpe. I also think Trump and Bobert are big talkers who anger a lot of unaffiliated voters, and they will vote Democrat because they get tired of drama queens. If you missed our back and forth, Billy is not a fan of Trump's plan to keep jihadists and their sympathizers out of America. And I say it's better than welcoming them across the border and handing them a Harvard degree, which seems to be our current plan right now. And by the way, at the top of the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to get into this with the chancellor of Colorado Christian University. He's got an op-ed out in Fox. Essentially, like, what has happened on our college campuses? This has been happening for decades, if you don't know. This anti-Semitism, and it's not just anti-Semitism. It's rooted in Marxist thinking. You got to go deeper on it, and it is so prevalent. And I'm going to ask this question. Have you heard from the University of Colorado standing with Israel? How about CSU or Metro or Colorado College? Any of these institutions willing to provide any type of moral clarity on this issue? And that we fall into this both sidism, which is just, guys, this was the single greatest murder of Jews in a single day since the Holocaust. And I'm watching these videos, these GoPro videos of these Hamas terrorists, these jihadists coming across and hunting families. This wasn't a war. This wasn't soldiers versus soldiers. This was a massacre. And no matter how you feel about Israeli-Palestinian conflict, all that stuff, this was horrific. And if you can't say that, there is something wrong, especially with the leadership of the schools of this country. There was an op-ed written by a Berkeley law professor. Do not hire my law students that supported this. You saw the 30 student groups at Harvard. By the way, they've taken the letter down because of the public pressure. Good. There's a debate over whether or not those students' names should be out there. I'm leaning on the side that they should. Are we going to ruin their careers for the rest of their lives? No, but they should have pressure on them. You stood with Hamas terrorists when they indiscriminately killed young people, innocent people. There's no room for that. Draw a line in the sand, you weak university presidents. Teach your kids something. You can see I get all fired up about this. So Chancellor Sweeting, Colorado Christian University, Hamas-Israel war reveals the world's oldest hatred in American higher education. We have to root this out at our universities. This is where we educate our business leaders, our doctors, our counselors. And we're just allowing this stuff to fester. We're going to cover that and more. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler, 710 KNUS. We'll be right back. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler this beautiful Tuesday morning, October 17th. High 83 today. My goodness, we're back in the 80s. All right, so during the last segment, I got into this. The cowards that are running our nation's universities. Columbia University refuses to condemn professor who called Hamas attack, quote, awesome. Friends, it is despicable. It's disgusting what is happening in our schools. And this is where we're training our doctors, our lawyers, our judges, our business leaders, our counselors, pretty much anyone with an advanced degree. And there become cesspools for anti-Semitism. But more than that, it's rooted in Marxist thinking. They've been plagued. They're soaked in it. It's like they're swimming in Marxism at these universities, with the exception of the wonderful, esteemed Colorado Christian University. Dr. Donald Sweeting is on the line with me. He wrote an op-ed in Fox that came out this week. Hamas-Israel war reveals the world's oldest hatred in American higher education. CCU very clear on where it stands. It stands with Israel. It drew a line in the sand. It will not allow this to happen. Now, that's not a blank check. It's not to say everything that Israel ever does is great. We're going to support that. We know we're going into a war. There's challenges here. But the fact that Hamas came across the border and attacked innocent civilians in the single greatest death and murder of Jews since the Holocaust should be easily condemned by leaders of America's educational institutions, and they won't do it, with the exception of Colorado Christian University. That's why I'm honored to have the Chancellor, Dr. Donald Sweeting, on with us. Chancellor Sweeting, give us a sense of what is happening with our colleges these days.
Good morning, Jeff. Well, first of all, we're all sobered by the tragic events, the disastrous events for Israel, and the mass murder, the attacks, the taking of hostages, the beheadings, the barbarity of it all. And so, at CCU, we're steeped in the Judeo-Christian tradition. We look at Israel as our best ally in the world and the guardian of the most of the world's Jewish population. We also have a deep affinity because, look, they're relatives of our Lord Jesus Christ. As Christians, we read the scriptures, and God entered a unique covenant with Israel in the past, and He has used Abraham and his descendants to bring blessings to the world that we're all beneficiaries of, and so we're deeply rooted in it. That does color us. That used to color American universities, but as we've moved away from just a Judeo-Christian worldview, from understanding, even knowing about the Bible, we've replaced that framework with a very different framework, a moral framework, a relativistic framework, an anti-Western framework, a hatred of the Judeo-Christian tradition, the rise of a neo-Marxist meta-narrative, which looks at the world as you're either the oppressor or you're the oppressed. And in this case, they look at Hamas as the oppressed, and then they mix it up with a little bit of post-colonial theory, just saying, the Israelis are colonizers, not recognizing the fact that they were there long. They're the indigenous people of that land. And then, on top of all this, mix it in is just a naivete about Hamas and its aims and the aims of Hezbollah and Iran.
And when they embrace this kind of Marxist thinking, it gives them the leeway to at least forgive whatever may happen, right? So because Hamas is the oppressed and Israel's the oppressor, yes, you can drive your motorcycles across the border and decapitate babies. I mean, it's crazy how they justify this on America's college campuses because of this types of Marxist thinking.
Yeah, and it's not. It is neo-Marxist thought that's mixed in there, but it's not simply neo-Marxist thought. There's a relativism that Alan Bloom talked about back in the 1980s that was descending on our universities. There is this anti-Western assault on Western institution and values. But don't forget that there is driving this too is the naivete about the very claims of Hamas. Its charter aims to obliterate Israel, and lots of people are just, they don't even take that into account. They're treating Hamas like it's a poor minority group on the south side of Chicago or something like that. But they don't know what they're dealing with here.
How did we get here? I go back to God and Man at Yale and the book that was, kind of originally exposing what was happening in our higher education. This is where we used to send our very best to help produce great citizens, to lead our communities and our nations. This is where our doctors came from, and our lawyers came from, and our airline pilots came from, and our religious leaders came from. This is where they all came from. And now people don't trust these institutions to produce quality citizens anymore.
Well, very interesting that you should bring up God and Man at Yale. This was a book written in the 1950s by William F. Buckley early in his career after he graduated from Yale. And it just was scandalous to many people because he said, look, Yale has this reputation for promoting America and free enterprise and Judeo-Christian worldview, but it's not doing that anymore. And you should know about it. And you should think twice before you give to Yale. Of course, that frosted the administration and a lot of the faculty, but it turned out that Mr. Buckley was absolutely right. And there's a similar dynamic taking place now because I think the celebration of Hamas by faculty and students and the silence of administrators signifies a massive failure at the heart of American higher education, that so many academics and students should think this is the right response. And I think one of the results of this is that people that have been supporting Harvard and some of these other schools, they're pulling their funding. They're saying, we're not this. If this is what you're putting out, we're not with you anymore.
Yeah, John Huntsman, just the former presidential candidate, had the Huntsman Institution at the University of Pennsylvania said they will not get another dime from me because of your lack of leadership on this. So you have a few things going on here. One is you have groups that are supporting Hamas and blaming Israel on these college campuses. That's evil in itself. But the unwillingness of university presidents to lead on this and provide any type of moral clarity is indicative of the fact that universities are just broken. They have no sense of truth anymore.
Now, there have been some exceptions. One of the best ones is the University of Florida, where former Senator Ben Sasse is president, and he said, "Look, we're going to be protecting our students, especially our Jewish students, and we're going to be protecting speech. And we roundly condemn this act as barbaric and Hamas as terrorists." And he didn't make any bones about it. So I'm thankful for exceptions, but that's the sad thing. That's the exception. We were a lone voice in speaking out.
Why do you think they're so afraid of truth? Why won't they teach truth? Why have we gotten to a place with our universities where they just allow kind of anything to happen out there?
Well, I think this is part of a rise of anti-Semitism we're seeing around the world. Now, you got to put what's happening in the universities in a wider context. And you see crowds around the world, and they're shouting things like "gas the Jews." There are attacks in France and in the UK on Jews that have increased. They're putting officers around synagogues and Jewish centers to protect them. So here we are, 78 years after World War II, the Holocaust, and there's this rise of anti-Semitism around the world, and of course it's showing up at our best universities as well in mass form. Very disturbing.
Wall Street Journal yesterday, this comes from a law professor: "Don't hire my anti-Semitic law students. Would your clients want an attorney who condones hatred and monstrous crimes? I teach corporate law at the University of California, Berkeley, and I'm an advisor to the Jewish Law Students Association. My students are largely engaged and well prepared, and I regularly recommend them to legal employers. But if you don't want to hire people who advocate hate and practice discrimination, don't hire some of my students. Anti-Semitic conduct is nothing new on university campuses, including here at Berkeley. He's right. This has been happening now for decades. Last year, Berkeley's law students for justice in Palestine asked other student groups to adopt a bylaw that banned supporters of Israel from speaking at events. It excluded any speaker who, quote, expressed or continued to hold views or host, sponsor, promote events in support of Zionism, the apartheid state of Israel, and the occupation of Palestine. Do you think this is going to be a reckoning, Chancellor Sweeting, Chancellor of Colorado Christian University? Is this a reckoning moment on college campuses where things are going to turn?
Well, we've seen in the last 10 years, confidence in higher education dropping like a rock. And one of the reasons it's dropping, it's not just cost. It is the radical ideologies that are being promoted and the lack of substantive education at many schools, not everywhere, not in every place. And so people are just saying, why pay for that? That's ridiculous. So I do hope it's a moment of reckoning. I do hope that many people vote with their dollars and they just say, forget it. And the schools experience the consequences of that and change. So will that happen? I don't know. Some of these schools are so deeply endowed that no you protest will change them.
I was with some Jewish leaders on a Zoom right after the attacks happened on the weekend, and they were talking about these responses on college campuses because they happened within a day. This wasn't like a thoughtful engagement or review of what happened. Like the next day, Saturday, the attacks happened Saturday morning. By Saturday afternoon, some of these colleges are coming out, student groups with statements of support. So it wasn't of Hamas. This wasn't like we're going to look at the issues. It was clear that anything Israel did, they were going to oppose, even if it was responding to what happened by Hamas in the attack of innocent civilians. They were going to stand with Hamas. So this was baked in to the university. I got to ask you this question. Go ahead, Chancellor Sweeting.
Before you ask me the question, let me just say I'm not against protests. I'm not against debate. We should have. University is a place to have that. What I am against is when administrators are silent, where there's this celebration of barbarity, and they have a duty to speak out. I am against when universities abandon the project of talking about virtue and moral formation, which they've done for years. And of course, I am very much against what's been happening in the universities before this, where you get places like Berkeley creating Jew-free zones and the BDS movement calling Israel an apartheid state and all that. That's been going on for a couple decades. And I think university administrators' voices should be clear in speaking out against that.
Have we heard from any other colleges in Colorado? University of Colorado, Colorado State University, Colorado College, Metro, any of the actual leaders of these universities providing moral clarity for their students on these issues?
I don't know, and I can't speak for them. I just don't know.
Yeah. So here's a final question. We're up against a break here, but Town Hall went through and listed the leaders of these schools, and then their names were put on a van around Harvard and driven around to create pressure that if you sign these types of statements supporting Hamas, you're going to be publicly known about it. My question to you, because this is a debate within the conservative movement, Candace Owens saying we shouldn't be putting students' names on lists because they're young, they might make a mistake, and they shouldn't pay for this forever. Megyn Kelly making the argument that this isn't some political issue. This is a human rights moral issue. And if you take a stand on the side of Hamas, yes, future employers should know about it. Do you have thoughts on that with regards to 21, 22, 23-year-old students having their names put on lists?
I think that's an irrelevant debate right now. Given the potential for this to explode, I think we should be praying for peace in the Middle East, for the peace for Jerusalem. I think we should be praying for President Biden as he's going to go to Israel. I think that should be our focus. The world is at a very fragile, dangerous moment. And so I think our eyes have to be on bigger things than that.
Then putting together the list. Great. Chancellor Sweeting, thank you so much. Thank you for your clarity on this, for your leadership on this. It's very clear where Colorado Christian University stands. And I'm thankful. I'm so thankful that one of the most conservative universities in America is right here in the midst of all the craziness that's happening in Colorado. Appreciate your bold moral leadership on this. I wish other universities did the same. Thanks so much, Chancellor Sweeting.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Friends, when we come back, I'm going to ask that question to you with regards to lists on students that sign these types of statements. Should they be made public? Candace Owens, as I mentioned, was saying, no, they're young and stupid college students, and they shouldn't have the rest of their lives ruined over this. Megyn Kelly is saying this is a clear moral indicator of who these types of people are, and businesses should know. But I'm going to throw a twist out there because I work at a Christian university. And there are times when the left is going to look at graduates of Christian universities and go, I disagree with their morals. And should that follow them around when it's done by the other side? Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. We'll continue this conversation. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Jeff Hunt filling in for the great George Brauchler, the man of mystery. Somewhere out there, you know, they designed the whole Jason Bourne series after George Brauchler. I don't know if you know that, but maybe it wasn't Jason Bourne. Maybe it was Naked Gun and Leslie Nielsen. Could be one of those others. George, honored to be able to fill in for you. I'm the director of the Centennial Institute and chairman of the Western Conservative Summit. All right, so we've been having debates all morning, everything from Taylor Swift to Donald Trump's effort to stop jihadists from coming over the border. I'm going to ask this question to you now because it's a debate happening within the conservative movement. Town hall, after those 30 student groups at Harvard came out in support of Hamas, not neutral. Okay, they blamed Israel for what happened and basically said, yes, the slaughter of innocent Israelis was your fault, Israel. And so 30 groups from Harvard, and this isn't just at Harvard student groups. This has happened at Columbia. This has happened at all of these elite Ivy League schools where you have this Marxist, I want to say pro-jihadist view that has infiltrated these college campuses and taken hold there and root there. So what Town Hall does is they go out there and they look up the heads of all these organizations, and they created a list of the students. And then somebody bought a van and drove around Harvard with the names of these students that are parts of these groups on there. Okay? Candace Owens saying, hey, they're college students. They're dumb. This is a time of life where they're not very smart. By putting them on a list, you're going to ruin their futures. Now, I'm gonna square that with articles that are coming out in the Wall Street Journal from Berkeley professors saying, don't hire these students. Don't hire them. Do not hire my anti-Semitic law students. So here's my question to you. All right. Megyn Kelly took the other side of this debate. She said, this is not a political statement. This is not like marching in a BLM rally. This isn't being pro-choice on a college campus. What happened to the Israelis by Hamas was the murder of innocent civilians. This is a human rights issue. So stand up against these people and make sure that they feel the pain of this. And if you end up on a list, and that's what it takes for you to finally wake up and go, gosh, I shouldn't be supporting terrorist organizations, then so be it. Billy, I'm going to ask you this. Should these students' names be put on a list? Is it going to ruin them for the rest of their lives?
The question, like a couple of things is, one, who's assembling the list? And two, what would be the use of the list? They are young kids, and we all have, when we were younger, made bad decisions. The other question I have on the list is, are we talking about just the leaders? Are we talking about every individual inside of the group? Because for me, if all of the people in that group, if they didn't have some sort of a conversation and some sort of a vote, some sort of a discussion about it, then you hang this on the leaders. I'm not convinced yet that every one of these groups around the country at these colleges got together, had a discussion, and said, here's our position. My guess is it's the leaders.
It was the leaders. That's exactly right.
I gotta grab the phone here.
Yeah, so the calls are coming in on this one. It was the leaders, right? But here's where I'm a little torn on this, okay? I come from a very conservative Christian university. Let's say I host a rally for Jack Phillips. I did that, all right? And we do a document. We're going to stand with Jack Phillips. We believe Jack Phillips, all right? And Christian conservative students put their names down in support of Jack Phillips. And then One Colorado, or the Human Rights Campaign, runs around and says, hey, corporate Fortune 500 companies, here's the students from a Christian conservative university that have biblical principles, and in their minds, they see that as hatred and homophobic and discriminatory. Do not hire them. Do not hire them. So, one, if we get into this kind of system of creating lists, groups are going to do this to each other. And it's going to harm 21, 22-year-old students. Here's where I am on the other side of this, okay? I'm so grateful that the Jewish leaders in business and in law are standing up against their alma maters and saying, you stand with terrorists from Hamas, you will not get a job. We are going to end this gross anti-Semitism on college campuses. And I believe in economics enough to know that unless there's pain associated, you will not end this type of baloney. And so the fact that there's names driving around Harvard going, these leaders of these organizations have signed on to support Hamas and are anti-Semitic and support the killing of innocent human beings, that type of pressure ends that stuff. And I appreciate that. All right, David, are you calling all the way from San Francisco?
Oh, sure. I call every once in a while.
That's awesome. How's San Francisco these days?
Well, we just got some sunlight, and looks like it's going to be a clear day.
I'm glad the weather's good. I wish you had better political leaders. What are your thoughts on this list, David?
Well, it crosses my mind that have you ever read the old book Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire?
I have not. I've heard of it.
Well, it starts out, even in the opening preface, not even the first chapter, they say that paranoia was the reason why Rome fell. That they were spending so much money on security that they weren't even fixing their potholes.
Huh.
They weren't getting the water fixed. They weren't, taking care of the sewage problems, things like that. So paranoia was sapping their budget. And so when I look at the people that are trying to destroy America, people like Grover Norquist, the guy that says that America's budget has finally come to an end, that we can't spend anymore. And he's pretended for, 30, 40 years that the national debt is a problem. And he calls it a problem that has to be stopped. Well, what he's done is he's taken the name of everything that we've spent since 1776, and that would be called a running total, and that he's saying, no, we can't spend any more. Well, that's crazy. If we want our country to go into the future, of course we have to spend more. And we're investing in ourselves. And so he's basically taken an idea that America is has an end result, and that end result can't go any further. So I would call him a traitor. And the idea of basically then spending money on paranoia, causing America to have to defend itself so much that we create a civil war. Well, who would be in favor of that? Well, a pack of traitors. Klansmen would love it. The Nazis, they'd love it. And the old aristocrats of 1776, they hated America's republic, the idea that we, the people, run this place, not some stinking king. And so they would love for America to stop spending, and then you'd have a bunch of rich Saudis come in.
David, I'm going to go back to the original question because we seem to have gotten off of onto spending issues, which I could definitely go into, and I'd be happy to have that debate on you. But the original question was about kids on lists. Do you support those being released? Those kids that signed the statements in support of Hamas?
Well, you know what doxing is, right?
Yes.
So is doxing dangerous? Is doxing dangerous? And are they doing this to people that are under 18?
Well, they're I don't think they're under 18. They're college students, so they're going to be over 18. But these are students that made a public declaration in support of Hamas and against Israel. Do you don't think that being willing to sign a statement, so no one's giving out their address, no one's giving out their phone numbers. That's another degree. That's another degree. How about their names? They signed a document. They put their organization's name on a document in support of Hamas against Israel. You don't think that those names should be made public? You think they can just continue to kind of enjoy all the benefits of being at an Ivy League school without any type of pushback?
Well, there are two different layers of what you're saying. Now, what is this exact thing that they signed? Does it say, I support Hamas? Or does it say, I support the people of Gaza who are getting blasted to bits because they found oil underneath Gaza and that they're trying to drive the people out of Gaza?
It said
Now,
Israel was entirely responsible for the death that took place in those attacks by Hamas.
Inevitably, yeah, sure, because it's benign neglect. Are you familiar with Gaza?
Yes.
That it's like, you remember how in America we took the Indians and put them on a crap land reservation? Well, all of a sudden they've discovered that there's oil underneath Gaza. So 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when Gaza was being developed, that was the worst land. There was no water down there. They had to beg to get water from Israel. They had to go through gates in order to get to groceries.
That's because they attack the Israelis. It's within the Hamas charter to eradicate Jews.
And put them on a reservation. They put them on a reservation. That's what Gaza was. Yeah.
The Israelis.
No. They discovered oil recently. 2019, they discovered oil is underneath Gaza. A United Nations report discovered that it's hundreds of billions of dollars worth of oil underneath Gaza. Now, guess who's going to go in on that one? They're going to try to drive the people off so they got no mineral rights. And then, bam, all of a sudden, who's going to get fat and happy?
David, they went in and executed innocent children. What does this have to do with responding to Israel?
So what's in the petition?
That Israel is entirely responsible for the deaths and murders that took place against their own innocent civilians. Come on. Hamas has it in their charter to eradicate Israel. They're anti-Semitic. They drove across the border and killed innocent human beings. And these college students with their organization signed on in support of Hamas against Israel. One college professor at Columbia saying that Hamas's attack was, quote, awesome. Awesome. These are sick with anti-Semitism that needs to be addressed.
I'd like to read that actually, because I think that there's some opinions that are being, some editorializing about this whole thing, because I can't imagine more than two people saying that I support Hamas. I think that the reality is that this petition said that if you know about Gaza, the nation of Israel does provide its water. The nation of Israel does not allow food to get in unless they have a piece of the action. And so if the people are starving in Gaza, that's because Israel is not allowing food in.
David, it's always Israel's fault, right? It couldn't be their Hamas political leaders that are trying to do all this.
Taxation without representation.
David, I appreciate it. We're up against the commercial break here. I appreciate the call. The question was, these college students that have signed on to support Palestine, and in some cases, Hamas. Not all of these students that supported Palestine are supporting Hamas, but they are chanting on these college campuses and in protests, rallies around the country, incredibly anti-Semitic things, gas the Jews, those types of things. This is not a human rights. We wish Israel would treat the Palestinians better. This is rote anti-Semitism. Their names have been exposed, and they're going to have to deal with the consequences of this. All right, we are just a few hours now away from the vote for the new Speaker of the House in the House of Representatives. And Colorado Congressman Doug Lamborn is going to be joining us at the top of the hour. I'm going to ask him about who he's supporting. Is he going to get behind Jim Jordan? Can the Republicans get this done and get back to work? That I like the federal government working that much, but in this case, I think they should be defending Israel. That's going to put more pressure on them. All of this will be coming up at the top of the 9 o'clock hour. We are up against a commercial break. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler on this beautiful Tuesday, October 17th, 8:49 a.m. Warm and windy today, high of 83. Gosh, you got to love it. You got to love Colorado on days like this, huh? All right, at the top of the hour, you're not going to want to miss this. We've got Congressman Doug Lamborn from Colorado Springs just hours away from the vote for the Speaker of the House. I'm going to ask him about Jim Jordan and whether or not Jim's got the votes. Come on, Republicans, let's get this done. If it wasn't for the pressure coming from Israel and the fact America needs to be there to support its ally, I would say, go on with the debate a little bit. I don't get these continuing resolutions, these omnibus spending bills. My goodness, $33 trillion in debt. The last caller kind of went off on a tangent on that, and we could have gotten into that debate as to what debt's enough debt, right? $33 trillion. If that's not bad debt, why not go to 50, baby? Come on, print the money. At a certain point, there's too much debt in this country, and I'd like to see the Republicans address it. I think that's part of the debate that's happening in Washington, D.C. right now around Jim Jordan. I think Jim would be fine. I've met Jim on a few occasions. He's never been to the Western Conservative Summit. We've tried to get him here. Busy guy. But seems like a fine pick. He's part of the conservative caucus. He stood with them. He stood with Donald Trump. He has also been with Kevin McCarthy. Remember when they called for Jim Jordan to be the speaker? Last time he supported Kevin McCarthy. He seems to navigate those challenges pretty well. And that's kind of the Republican Party right now. You've kind of the traditional old school Republicans, the Bush, Romney, McCain type of Republicans. They're still around a little bit. You have the Tea Party. You have the leadership, the Freedom Caucus. You have all that stuff right now. You got to have somebody that can navigate all those different little coalitions within the Republican Party. Jim Jordan seems fine to me. I don't doubt his conservative credentials. I don't think he's going to go down a weird path and create problems with Democrats in the Senate. So if that's the case, he can only lose 4 Republicans and still be the speaker. He loses more than that, he can't be the speaker. Ken Buck coming out saying he's not sure he's going to support Jim Jordan. Here's why. Ken Buck saying that he has problems with how Jim Jordan handled January 6th in the last election. And he's concerned with the upcoming election, that he doesn't want those problems to continue. So Ken Buck is on the fence. Can Jim Jordan pull in the Matt Gaetz component? We'll cover that when we come back with Doug Lamborn at the top of the hour. I also want to make sure you see this about Proposition HH. Denver Post coming out in support of Proposition HH. Don't buy it. Okay, their arguments are that, well, yes, the property tax issue is really challenging, but it's just a little bit of your Tabor refund that we can take away, and we need to address these property taxes. I went back and looked. The Denver Post supported the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment. So yes, you can thank the Denver Post for putting us in the exact situation we are in. If you're wondering why your property taxes are through the roof, it's because we got rid of Gallagher in 2020. This was all a setup by the Democrats to get rid of the Tabor refund. They planned this. And the Denver Post is just going along with it all because they're part of that cabal that wants to see the government in control in the state of Colorado. And for the government to be in more control, they got to have more of your tax dollars. It's all part of it. It's all part of the plan. So don't buy the Denver Post coming out today saying, by the way, I don't even know why people read the Denver Post anymore. Denver Gazette, so much better. Complete Colorado is great. That's our friends over at the Independence Institute. If you're looking for alternatives to crazy woke leftist agenda driven media, just go ahead and push the Denver Post and Channel 9 aside and embrace the Denver Colorado Springs Gazette and the Complete Colorado. And of course, 710 KNUS, where you get all the good stuff. Denver Post saying that if you just give up a little bit of your Tabor refund, you'll be able to get some property tax relief. Here's the number one argument against all this. It was never necessary to attach Tabor to property tax relief. They never had to do that. That is why Proposition HH is so bad. They went out there and said, oh my goodness, with all these rising property taxes, which we created, by the way, we can get rid of that if you just give up your Tabor refund. Just give up your Tabor refund. Don't think about it. Don't think about it. There are the arsonists that are showing up as the firefighters. They created this problem, and the ultimate goal. By the way, I was like, I pulled this up the other day. The Yes on HH website. Okay. Just think about all the organizations that are coming out in support of Proposition HH when you think about the fact that the Denver Post is supporting it today. All right. The Aurora Sentinel, right? That's just like a Marxist newspaper. Okay. The League of Women Voters in Colorado, the Daily Sentinel, the Daily Camera up in Boulder. Starting to get a pattern here. How about the Colorado Democratic Education Initiative? How about the AFL-CIO? Have you ever thought of these great organizations? The Colorado Democrats, right there on the bottom. You can see it, endorsed by the Colorado Democrats and the Bell Policy Center. Just let me ask you this. The PTA of Colorado, the teachers unions, have you ever known the teachers unions and the Colorado Democrats and all those people to go, you know what we would really like is to save you money by cutting your taxes? You know forever that their goal has been to eliminate Tabor so they can have more of your money and the government can have more power. That has been the end game all along. So when you see that the Denver Post comes out in favor of Proposition HH today, I want you to know that they were also in favor of getting rid of the Gallagher Amendment, which has created these problems. Don't buy it. It's a hard no on HH and II. Just vote no on everything, man. Just vote no on everything. We don't want the government to have more power, more money. Keep it to yourself. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. We're going right to the phone lines. Republicans are heading into vote right now on Speaker of the House. We have joining us Congressman Doug Lamborn of the 5th District. He serves as a high-ranking member of the House Armed Services Committee. We'll get into that and Israel in a minute. But Congressman, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Jeff, it's great to be on your show and to talk with you and all of your listeners.
Congressman, who's going to be the next Speaker of the House?
We'll know in an hour.
Are you
1 hour? In 1 hour, Jeff, we have a quorum call, and then right after that, we go into a roll call vote for Speaker, and I do support Jim Jordan.
Great. Tell us why you support Jim.
He's a great conservative. The Democrats will have a cow if he's elected, and he's a man of principle. He endorsed me once in one of my earlier races for Congress in a primary election. He and I have been friends for a long time. I'll do whatever I can to help him.
It seems like he navigates the different coalitions of the Republican Party pretty well. He supported Kevin McCarthy during the initial speakership. He's also a member of the Republican Study Committee, of the Freedom Caucus. He's known to be pretty conservative, so he can kind of bounce between all the different factions. Do you get a sense that you've finally been able to pull this together? I mean, this is a big deal. We've got to get a leader in the House of Representatives.
Well, we absolutely do, and it shouldn't have even happened 2 weeks ago, Jeff, where we threw out Kevin McCarthy. 96% of us wanted to keep him in place. And we're almost half done with this particular Congress. You know, we have more important things to do, frankly. We need to pass appropriation bills. We need to make the Senate adhere to some spending restraints as well as the White House. We really have a lot of work to do, and taking weeks and weeks to do something like this, I think, is a huge distraction and should have never happened in the first place.
Do you think, well, give us a sense of how you think Jim Jordan is going to be a Speaker of the House.
Okay, should he get elected? And by the way, it only takes 5 people to stop him, which is like less than 3%. So it's so difficult given the narrow margin that we have. And of course, all the Democrats march in lockstep against us, so they can't be counted on, one bit. Even if the country's hanging in the balance, they'll go for their party loyalty over everything else. But Jim Jordan would be a strong speaker. I think he would negotiate well with the Senate. Sometimes Jim has a confrontational approach, and that could be what's needed. But sometimes we're in a divided government. The Senate has a say. The White House has a say. We have 1/2 of 1/3 of the government, which is that's not dominant. So we have to make some concessions to get some of what we want. No party's going to get 100% of what they want, and I think Jim understands that as well.
John Boehner, who once served as the Speaker from 2011 to 2015, was not a fan of Jim Jordan. I think one time he referred to him as a legislative terrorist. Is that good news for Jim Jordan coming from a guy like John Boehner, you think?
Well, that was like 8 years ago. Jim now has a position of responsibility. He's chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and he's been leading these really important investigations into Hunter Biden, the weaponization of government, and other things like that, the IRS. So I think it's really good that Jim has been leading those investigations. And by the way, the worst that can happen is if he doesn't get elected, he'll continue to do those investigations, leading those investigations. Now, of course, as Speaker, he'd still be involved. But so either way, we win. Either way, the American people wins, I think.
So if it, for some reason, isn't Jim Jordan, do you see anything else percolating behind the scenes of another person that may rise up? We saw Steve Scalise kind of withdrew. From our perspective, it only seems to be Jim Jordan at this point. Is there anybody else competing out there?
No one else is competing. But in politics, like nature, abhors a vacuum.
Yeah.
So if Jim does not get 217 votes and has to step aside, then I'm sure there will be other names bandied about. But let me repeat, Jeff, we shouldn't be doing this exercise anyway. We're in the middle of a 45-day continuing resolution. where we didn't pass all our appropriation bills by September 30th. Now, we did pass 4 of the 12 in the House. The Senate has passed 0. And the 4 we passed amount to 70% of our discretionary spending. 70%.
Wow.
So we're doing our work, but we can't afford to take these 2-week recesses while we try to find someone to replace someone who was doing a very good job at the time.
I want to ask you about Israel. You're a high-ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. I was listening to Hugh Hewitt prior to this show. I encourage people to go listen to that. He talks with the former NATO Supreme Commander about 2 carrier divisions that are now in the Middle East, just off the coast of Israel, to defend Israel. Can you give us a sense of what America is doing to defend Israel against these attacks from Hamas and possibly coming Hezbollah?
Well, for one thing, Jeff, we're going to send some Iron Dome batteries. I've been pushing the Army for years to use these. They've never done it. It's sort of like the not invented here mentality.
Mhm.
And so we should send those back to Israel. They know how, and they need to use those batteries. And by the way, I was one of the initial people behind the funding of what created Iron Dome in the first place, for which I really, that warms my heart. That's a defensive system that prevents people from being killed. It's not even offensive, it's defensive. And I'm so glad we did that. So we have funded that in large part. We've given all kinds of other military equipment and funding to Israel over the years. We're going to even step that up. That's another reason why we need a speaker, Jeff. We need to do a supplemental funding bill here real soon to beef up what we're doing for Israel, given everything that they've been through.
You were just in Israel this last summer. You happened to visit with Colorado Christian University students while you were there. When you saw what happened this past weekend, or 2 weekends ago now, the attack that took place in Israel, what were your feelings? What has been your experience in Israel?
On July 4th, when I saw those great students and how eager and how accomplished they were from Colorado Christian University, I was so impressed with them and with the whole operation and with the school there. In that visit to Israel, we also went down to Sderot, my wife and I, and the group we were with. And of course, that's one of the places where Hamas terrorists came in and killed men, women, and children, burned them out of their homes, shot survivors as they were fleeing out of burning houses, committed huge atrocities. And I wonder if some of the people we met are even living today, if some of them maybe had gotten massacred. But Sderot is like right next to Gaza, and the kind of place you don't get a 10-minute, 5-minute warning. You get like a 15-second warning if there are missiles coming in.
Wow. So where does this go with Iran and Hezbollah? You serve as a senior ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. You have a good sense of foreign affairs and our government's commitment to these issues. Where is this going to go with Iran and Hezbollah from your perspective?
One of the laws I passed earlier in my time here in Congress was the Taylor Force Act, which says that money should not go to the Palestinians as long as they're supporting terrorism. The Biden administration hasn't really been enforcing that, which is really sad. Another big mistake the Biden administration has done is give that $6 billion to Iran for 5 hostages. Now, money is fungible, and I don't know if the money has even hit their bank accounts. And by the way, we're trying to claw that back, Jeff. But it displaces the need to spend for other things. So because money is fungible, they can more easily fund their terrorist activities in the future if that money gets to them. So we can't let that happen. That was a huge mistake by Biden. And also the negotiations that the administration is doing on the nuclear deal with Iran. You can't trust them. We have to have maximum sanctions. We have to really turn the screws to make life difficult for them. And yet the Biden administration has been easing up, kind of like Barack Obama did. And Iran has not been placated or is moderating anything in their activities. They have become more aggressive and more terroristic. Biggest exporter of terrorism in the whole world. And I don't know why the Biden people don't understand that.
I think I read that America is sending something like 2,000 troops over to Israel right now. Can you tell us what their role is?
I don't have the details on that. I'm going to be getting that, Jeff, so I can't really comment on that right now.
Yeah, I saw that. I think they're right now in kind of an advisory capacity. I don't think they're going to be directly engaging with Hamas, as you can
absolutely.
imagine. Go ahead, Congressman.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Jeff. We don't want to have any boots on the ground, and Israel doesn't want that either. They take pride in defending themselves with their own manpower. So they wouldn't want that even if we offered it. And I'm sure that's not even on offer. I'm sure it's strictly background advising.
Yeah. Congressman, I know you've got to go take a vote. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, walking into the Capitol. This is a historic moment to fill us in on what's happening. Thank you as well for your service to the constituents of the 5th District of Colorado.
Keep up your great work.
Thank you, Congressman. That was Congressman Doug Lamborn of the 5th District of Colorado. He serves as a high-ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee. Billy, I got a sense that it's probably Jim Jordan that's going to be coming through, but now he loses 4 or 5 Republican votes and this thing continues to spin. I think this is a problem for Republicans. I think they've got to figure this thing out and get a leader in there, or they come across as not being able to lead.
This is an enormous problem. This is a phenomenally bad time for Republicans to be caught in this situation. And there are some implications in my mind politically, looking at the 2024 election, and there are some implications practically. And I have some disagreement with how some of what Congressman Lamborn was laying as far as laying the table and talking about Jim Jordan, his ability to do things and get things accomplished. I'm hard pressed to figure out how Jordan is going to be a better, more effective speaker than McCarthy. And that was the issue, that he wasn't good enough. Also, the fact that Lamborn was on here upset that we are caught in this situation, that the Republicans are having to go through this vote again. And whose fault is that? It's not the Democrats. The Democrats just stood there and allowed the Republicans to shoot themselves in the face. I mean, if the shoe was on the other foot and Democrats were fighting over Nancy Pelosi being speaker, would there be anything going, how come the Republicans didn't step in to save Nancy? No, they would have sat there and voted no, get rid of her. Absolutely. And they would have been justified doing so. Democrats did the same thing. This is a self-inflicted wound. And politically, the problem that I've got is that right now, the Republicans hold an election advantage in one very important area. The electorate feels the Republicans are better positioned to get us through the difficulties the country is facing, economically and internationally. That's the feeling. But if you create paralyzation in the one branch that the Republicans have control over, the one branch of our government that the Republicans have the ability to craft and to set up the system for, and they can't figure out a speaker, that tells the broader electorate that you can't do your job. If we get to a government shutdown, or we get to this idea of yelling and screaming at each other over the budget, it is only the Republicans to blame at this point, because they are the ones that are lighting everything on fire. And I'm, again, how is Jordan the guy that's rising up to the top? How is he going to be more effective? Do you think things that are important for Jordan are going to be able to really get through in a bipartisan manner through the House, or does that matter? And then I understand Lamborn talking about, well, we passed 4 bills and the Senate hasn't done anything or taken them up. It's because what you put in the spending bills are an anathema to the Senate. And you knew this. You knew putting those things into the spending bills were not going to make it through the Senate in the beginning. So it's fine. You may feel better about voting on them. It's just like when the Republicans had the House and they voted how many dozens of times to repeal Obamacare. It was performative in nature. It wasn't going to be repealed because they didn't have the White House nor the Senate. They couldn't do it. But they could stand around and make each other feel good and high-five each other, and that's what we've got. So it's a paralyzation at this point. It's stupid.
Matt Gaetz just tweeting about 10 minutes ago, Jim Jordan for Speaker of the House. So if Matt Gaetz gets this done, now remember, the Republican Party is different than it was. And I used to work for Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan. I've met Paul Ryan on a number of occasions, had breakfast with him. Very accessible guy, different type of legislator than where I think the Republican caucus wants. Well, I mean, you could say 96% supported Kevin McCarthy, but if Matt Gaetz gets this across and Jim Jordan is the new speaker, this is a turning point in the type of Republican leadership in the House of Representatives.
Yes, it is. And I would like to review the statement that you just made, not once, but twice. If Matt Gaetz gets this accomplished,
yes,
you are now placing Matt Gaetz in this leadership captain navigation role in the House.
Yes.
Can you wrap your mind fully around that? Because that's spooky. To me, that's like the Democrats giving Rashida Tlaib the tiller and saying, all right, straight on, first start until morning. That is spooky that we think Matt Gaetz would be the person. And you think that if Matt Gaetz takes over that type of a leadership, that the larger electorate is then going to be persuaded by the things that the Republican Party will be doing in the House? You think that a vast majority of the electorate out there is like, Matt Gaetz is the guy. Matt Gaetz says the stuff that I agree with. I wish Matt Gaetz could run for president.
Not entirely, but he
Not
manages a coalition, right?
Not even
and
close.
Politics is all about coalition building. And if Jim Jordan gets this done, he's the guy that can build all those coalitions enough to get the votes.
Can he?
To get this done.
What,
We're going to find out in the next hour.
The thing is, I can't see him doing that. I can't see, given his history in Congress, I can't see him building those coalitions. He's going to have more difficulty than McCarthy did. And it's interesting that you bring up the idea of Paul Ryan, because remember, we jumped back more than a decade ago, 12, 13 years ago. Remember that book cover? Remember that book? Young Guns?
Oh, yeah, of McCarthy, Cantor,
McCarthy, Ryan
right,
on the cover. They were the guys that were going to lead the new Republican revolution.
Yes.
They were the guys that were going to chart the new course. They were the guys that were going to point us towards financial feasibility and balancing budgets and things like that. None of that was accomplished, and the only one still standing is McCarthy, and he's now irrelevant. So be careful. And those were the guys that were supposed to lead the Republicans into the next era.
Mm-hmm.
They no longer exist. Perhaps the Republicans need to figure out what they think the next era is, because those guys that were supposed to do it, they didn't agree with.
Well, it's the same era that is why Trump is appealing so well to voters, especially primary voters at this point. It is a direct on-the-nose confrontational approach. No more of this kind of negotiating, soft, tippy-toe around. Eventually, we kind of just drift to the left. We're Democrats, but slower type of mentality. They want another direction, directly confrontational, take it on the chin type of political engagement.
Yeah. And so basically and we see that with people like the commentators like Sean Hannity, who says that any sort of working with a Democrat is not acceptable for the party. Okay. Has anybody in this party paid attention to what went on in our civics class growing up? Did anybody pay attention to the founding fathers? Has anybody really looked at how the Constitution is designed and the split between the branches of government? Our government is designed for compromise. It cannot work if you refuse to work with the other people. Our government grinds to a halt. And now we have a party that actively says, I'm not going to work with the other side. And in fact, I have to be confrontational. And in fact, rather than running a government, we are going to have a sports ball game. And we are going to decide who gets the most points. And as long as my team wins, we don't care about the consequences.
Compromise has only been in one direction, and that's a bigger and more oppressive government.
I disagree.
Right.
I disagree with that. We have a laundry list of things that have shown compromise on both sides. And the Republicans need to understand that if they actually came to the table with some of their core principles that they used to hold, they can get this stuff done. But they've abandoned those. They've abandoned those core principles of limited government, of limited spending, individual freedom.
I think they're doubling down on that, Bill.
No,
they're doubling down.
They're not. Not in the least. They've abandoned all of them. The Republican Party didn't have an official platform in the last presidential election.
No, they just kept the same one going. They didn't make a new one.
No, they didn't.
They didn't have one.
No, they didn't. It was not on the website.
Yes, it was.
No,
it was. You can pull it up right now, Billy.
They didn't have an official platform. They didn't. They didn't create an official platform. They didn't have that.
They didn't recreate a new one. They kept the same one going. All right, we're up against a commercial break. Jeff Hunt filling in for the great George Brauchler, having a great time with Billy. Let us know whether or not you think Jim Jordan is ready to be the speaker. And if you think that's going to be good for America, I will absolutely admit he is not cut from the same cloth as Eric Cantor and Paul Ryan and McCarthy. He's not part of that group. He is different, but he's not so different. He's not in the Matt Gaetz kind of coalition. He can play in both coalitions. Then I think this might be a good move. Doug Lamborn supporting Jim Jordan. Look, they got Doug Lamborn and Matt Gaetz on the same page. I think that's probably a good indicator that Jim Jordan is going to be the next Speaker of the House. Let us know. Text in on the 710 KNUS app or give us a call, 303-696-1971. We'll be right back after these messages. You're listening to 710 KNUS.
Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today. Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today. Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you experience organization transformation in your home. Roll 'em Out Shelves, your clutter transformation experts, create affordable Colorado-crafted organized storage solutions. These custom options will maximize and organize your kitchen and bath storage as Roll 'em Out Shelves carefully designs and builds roll-out drawers to fit your space perfectly to clear the clutter. Contact owners Joyce and Brent at Roll 'em Out Shelves to schedule your free in-home estimate today. Say goodbye to clutter and hello to convenience when you
As usual, the text messages bounce back between Billy being wonderful and give him the microphone to Billy. You might as well register as a low testosterone Democrat. Jim, I'm filling in for George Brauchler on this beautiful Tuesday morning, October 17th. Warm and windy today, high of 83, a little bit cooler tomorrow, 72. And then 78, 82, 73, 70, 68, all the way through till next Monday. Nice, beautiful weather. Gotta stay like this forever. It's great Colorado weather. All right, so we are about 30 minutes away from the vote on Jim Jordan. We just hosted Doug Lamborn. If you missed that, you can listen to it on the 710 KNUS podcast. Doug's with Jim. Matt's with Jim. But if more than 4 Republicans defect, and Ken Buck has said he's not closed the deal with Jim Jordan right now. He doesn't like the way Jim Jordan handled the 2020 election. He didn't like Ken Buck doesn't like the fact that Jim Jordan stood with Donald Trump and all that. So that's Ken. I've already seen people pop up who want to primary him. Ken's going to have an interesting election year this year. Congressional District 4. But Doug Lamborn's with Jim Jordan. Matt Gaetz is with Jim Jordan. So we'll see in about 30 minutes. As we were discussing, this is something that Republicans have got to figure out. I think if Israel wasn't on the table, I don't mind. Kind of a non-functioning legislative body at the federal level. My gosh, the federal government is so big and has so much control, not doing anything. And I raise this all the time with our state legislature. We're the centennial state. We've been around since 1876. And each year our lawmakers introduce something like 400 bills. Okay, what brilliant bill have you introduced that's going to really help the people? You don't, it's just special interest drivel. It's just stuff. It's like corporations go hire these lobbyists and they go out there and they introduce these bills that don't help anybody but the lobbyist and the special interest group and the corporation that was behind it. So yeah, if the House of Representatives didn't have a leader and they're not passing bills, I'm okay with that. But Israel's on the table. It's critical that we defend her. It's an ally. It's the only democracy out there. And we, as Doug Lamborn said, we have to provide supplemental support to them. I don't think this is the same thing as Ukraine. I think you can ask really hard questions about what our funding is doing in Ukraine. I think that's perfectly fair and fine. But with regards to Israel and what they just went through, the single largest single-day murder of Jews since the Holocaust, this was like a 9/11 for them. Yes, you come to their defense. And this just might be me personally. I'm a great friend to have in a bar fight. A great friend. Because I don't even know what's happening. But you and me, we're friends, and somebody, we're going at it. I'm here. We're together. So there's that kind of side to me. All right. If you missed yesterday, Stephen Tubbs and his impersonation of Timmy Hamas, you got to go listen to the podcast on that because it was remarkable. All right. So you guys know Tim Hernandez, just an outright anti-Semite. Right? Just a pure Marxist. And we knew this was all coming. Right? You even saw the interviews on Channel 9 where, like, guys, if Kyle Clark isn't willing to get on your side as a Democrat, you're so far off because that guy lives and camps on that side of the aisle. Even he was challenging Tim Hernandez all before the whole Hamas thing. So Tim Hernandez, the appointed state legislator, comes out in support of Palestine like the day of the attacks. It's like 2 hours later. He's supporting Palestine against Israel. And this was a horrific terrorist attack against one of our allies. All right. So as a result, the Democrat Socialists of America, and I really want you to understand this about the state of Colorado, because you have to get clear on the fact that the Democrats in Colorado are not anything actually like Jared Polis or Michael Bennett or John Hickenlooper or those types of guys, okay? They run the top, yes. But the state legislature and the kind of the shock troops down at the bottom are radical Marxists. Okay, this isn't just a Israel-Palestine thing. The way they look at the world, and this is why Tim Hernandez's apology speech was so bad. And it just looked like a hostage video, right? You didn't actually believe that he was believing what he was saying. They look at the whole world as oppressors versus oppressed. Everybody's put in a category. And when you put people in categories like that, you justify anything that the oppressed do. That's why they kind of look at what Hamas did and are like, well, Israel kind of deserved it. Yes, the raping of women, the beheading of children, the execution of the elderly. And if you don't believe me, look at these college campuses. Look at these protests that are taken out there. When someone abides by this kind of Marxist worldview, you get this vision that it's, the oppressors can, or the oppressed can do pretty much anything they want because they're oppressed. And they put this into every other category of politics. This is why when we come back from the commercial break, I'm going to read to you Jack Phillips's op-ed in the Denver Gazette. This is what they justify with Jack Phillips. These people, Autumn Scardina and the couple that just wanted to bake a cake, they're oppressed people. And so, yeah, you can drive a guy before government tribunals for over a decade, not because it's right or wrong, we won't answer that, but because the oppressed group basically has a green light to do whatever they want against the oppressors. This is taught in our colleges. This is taught in our high schools. This is taught in our elementary schools. It is a disease of the mind. If you look at everything happening in politics through that lens, then you get people like Tim Hernandez. You get half of the Denver City Council. You get most school boards in this state that they can then justify their actions, even if they're wrong, because it is a Marxist oppressor versus oppressed worldview. Hey, Holly from Aurora, you're on with 710 KNUS.
Hi, Jeff. 2 questions. First, let me ask a question real quick. Are you going to be on any time the rest of this week?
I am not. I think they have other hosts filling in.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to check. And because I knew you were going to be on, but I didn't expect it today. And I just turned in. And
glad to have you. Glad to have you, Holly.
But I was gonna listen to you, but I wasn't thinking it was Tuesday. So I mean that you were going to be on Tuesday. Anyway, I told Billy what I wanted to do was get on the phone and just tell you that since I just turned in, everything you were saying, I either agreed with you or you made me laugh.
Oh.
I was.
That's great.
And I thought, terrific. I needed to laugh. There's too much serious stuff. I needed to laugh. And all of a sudden I thought, I'm going to tell him he probably needs to know that he needs to laugh.
Oh, I appreciate it, Holly. Yeah, go listen to Stephen Tubbs, Timmy Hamas impersonation, the yo, yo, yo. What's up? What's up? We're a bunch of Marxists here. I mean, it's pretty funny. Well, I appreciate you, Holly. Thank you for the call, and thank you for listening to 710 KNUS.
You bet. Have a good day.
You too. So understand, this is really important with regards to not only the state legislature, but our city councils. So there's a party out there called the Workers' Families Party, and they have a goal to go after all the city councils. So if you go to their website, just go to their website, Worker Families Parties. They're just outright communists, Marxists. They look at this through the worldview of oppressors versus oppressed. And they have a goal of taking over every city council in Colorado, in Lakewood, in Arvada, Westminster, all this stuff. And they're doing it. They're actually doing it. So guys, you cannot be asleep at the wheel on this, because the Democrats, Socialists of America, they're out there posting in support of Hamas, guys. The group posted its position just this past week, unequivocally stands with Palestine in its fight for liberation from the apartheid regime of Israel. The group posted its position exactly a week after Hamas, a group of America's terrorists, attacked Israel, killing an estimated 1,400 people. This is the Democrat Socialists of America, the Denver Democrat Socialists of America. So don't think that Timmy Hernandez, is just some outlier within the Democrat Party. No. This is so prevalent. And Jared Polis, Michael Bennett, John Hickenlooper, all of them, they sit over this kind of democratic regime. And if they want to get rid of this anti-Semitism, they need to do a lot more than Tim Hernandez making an apology video. They need to take this type of stuff out entirely. It shouldn't be in the Democrat Party. It shouldn't be in any party. But this is pervasive within the Democrat Party, and I'm calling on Jared Polis, Michael Bennett, John Hickenlooper, Phil Weiser, Jenna Griswold, everybody at the top. Clear your ranks of this anti-Semitism. And apology videos by Tim Hernandez are not. The Denver Democrat Socialists of America has to go. The working parties, families, those Marxists have to go. This is unacceptable. All right. We're up against a commercial break. This is Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. You're listening to 710 KNUS. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. Final segment. It's been wonderful to be with you all. Gosh, I love the state of Colorado. We're in a lot of problems, but I sure love the state of Colorado. All right, Jack Phillips out with another op-ed. If you wonder why we continue to hear about Jack Phillips, it's because the state and the leftists won't leave this guy alone. And here's the point I want to have for you all. If you don't recognize what they can do to Jack, they can do the same thing to you. In fact, this is what the title of his column is. What the state can do to me, it can do to you. So for 10 years, the leftists in this state have been going after Jack Phillips. Two particular cases, right? The first one had to do with whether or not he should be forced to use his artistic talent to make a wedding cake for somebody, a gay wedding cake that he disagreed with. Should he be forced to do that? Went all the way up to the Supreme Court. By the way, he lost here in Colorado, lost every way, all the way up to the Supreme Court. And then he wins a partial victory. And the U.S. Supreme Court looks at the Colorado Civil Rights Commission and is like, you guys are so openly hostile to the Christian worldview that you can't even be taken seriously. So they didn't overturn the law or anything. They're just like kind of a slap on the wrist to the Colorado Civil Rights Commission. Did the Colorado Civil Rights Commission change anything? No, of course not. Right. And by the way, this is something that Jared Polis is absolutely going to have to deal with if he wants to be the president of the United States. That the state under his leadership and a little bit of John Hickenlooper's leadership has been openly hostile to evangelical Christians. Like openly hostile. The Civil Rights Commission has gone after Jack Phillips and now Lori Smith and now Jack Phillips again. It's just not a good place to be. So do we want an America like that? I don't think so. All right. So Jack, 10 years of dealing with this first case. Then the second case is Autumn Scardina, which is a trans woman that wants a cake baked to celebrate transgenderism. Guess what? Autumn Scardina called Jack Phillips the day of the Supreme Court victory. You don't think this is targeted? Even if you just kind of disagree with Jack, you don't support his faith, all that stuff. Come on. You can't support a government that is literally allowing this tiny little baker out in Lakewood, Colorado, like off of Wadsworth there. You have to go out of your way to find his bakery. It's like this little homeschool bakery too, right? He's got his wife, his daughter, grandchildren. They all just kind of hang out together. Autumn Scardina is going to call the day of the victory and submit another case onto Jack. Give me a break. All right. So now Jack's back at the Supreme Court over this case. He says in his article, I'm asking the Colorado Supreme Court, which agreed on October 3rd, to take my appeal, to respect my freedom in the same way that the U.S. Supreme Court respected Lori's. By the way, footnote, has the Supreme Court here in Colorado like gotten it through their head that the U.S. Supreme Court disagrees with all of their decisions on this? They just like how many times do you have to be overruled where you're like, well, gosh, maybe I get this wrong?
Hey, Jeff, I want to jump in here just for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just for a sec. I just want to remind everybody that Autumn Scardina is not I would say, a genuine or legitimate actor inside of this case. And it's just for exactly the reason you pointed out, because now Autumn will tell you and I that she was just trying to test the veracity of Jack's statements about who he'd make cakes for and not and why. And when questioned, she says, well, I didn't know what I was going to do. No. I'm throwing the BS flag.
Yeah.
You knew exactly what you were going to do because of the language you've used before. You talked about the idea of testing the veracity. Yep. So you went in there to see if, based on what you thought, he was telling the truth, and you were going to take action afterwards. Because when you test somebody about something, an action is taken in response. Based on her core statement, she is lying to us about this being a genuine concern of hers and a genuine curiosity. This was motivated so that she could drag him back into court. She's trying to shut him down. And it's abhorrent, absolutely abhorrent.
They don't want to shut him down. They want to shut everybody with those types of values and beliefs down. And here's the point as we wrap up. Okay? This is going to sound a little controversial. I get it. We got to get a lot more serious about defending our fellow Christian conservatives that face this stuff. Okay? We hosted a big rally for Jack when this happened. We've hosted a big rally for Lori Smith. And in both cases, we had, some good turnout, but tepid turnout among Colorado's religious leaders. All right? And here's my controversial statement. I think we need to Al Sharpton the Christian conservative movement. Like, where you come and mess with us, and we are here to stand together. No more of this, well, I sure hope Jack makes it okay. 10 years of government tribunals, and you probably have never even visited his bakery? Seriously? Now, 710 KNUS stands with Jack. CCU stands with Jack. But we need to Al Sharpton this stuff. Get defensive. Push back. You can't mess with one of us. You get all of us. Right? Fight for our rights. They are picking Christian conservatives to try to not only make cases around you, but to intimidate all the other Christian conservatives into silence. Well, I'm not going to stand up because I don't want to end up like Jack Phillips. Baloney. Stand up. Get some courage and defend these people. Thank God for Jack Phillips and Lori Smith. They have done more to defend Christian conservative rights in Colorado than just about anybody else. And the hell they've gone through. I stood on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, spoke in favor of Lori Smith, and what the radical left did was incredible to try to intimidate her. So we need to get a spine. We need to get some courage and start pushing back on this. Friends, it's been great to be with you. Jeff Hunt filling in for George Brauchler. You're listening to The Tip of the Spear. News, commentary, all right here. 710 KNUS.